I lived in the Great Xian Dynasty, a land so vast it held billions of people. Everyone here shared a single dream: to step onto the path of cultivation and become an immortal. In the eastern reaches of the empire, near the Xuanlong Mountains, that obsession ran even deeper. The great sects hidden in those peaks shared basic body tempering techniques and breathing exercises with the wealthy clans. Because of this, children born into noble families had a much higher chance of awakening a spirit root than commoners. I was currently at the Lin family estate, one of the most powerful clans in the Donglin prefecture. On the massive training grounds, dozens of children sat cross-legged in perfect rows. Boys and girls, barely 10 years old, sat with their eyes closed and their palms facing the sky. These were the young masters and ladies of the Lin family. Usually, they were pampered and loud, but here, nobody dared to make a sound. The only thing I could hear was the rhythmic sound of their synchronized breathing. A man stood at the front, built like a tiger and standing 8 feet tall. His eyes were sharp as lightning as he scanned the group. He was the head instructor for the breathing arts. He told them to focus on the rhythm, to inhale the pure essence of the world and exhale the impurities. He explained that this essence would wash over their limbs, strengthening their flesh and nourishing their souls. If they didn't awaken their spirit roots by the age of 14, the path to immortality would be closed to them forever. They would be mere mortals, separated from the heavens by an unreachable gap. I was standing a short distance away, a boy of 13 or 14, wearing a simple, ancient-looking gray ring. While the noble children practiced, I was on my knees, scrubbing the floor with a rag. My eyes were fixed on them, watching every movement. My own breathing had shifted, perfectly matching the rhythm of the students. A fellow servant, his face covered in pockmarks, nudged my arm and whispered urgently. He told me I was flirting with death. Not long ago, a servant was caught trying to steal martial arts secrets, and the instructor had gouged his eyes out on the spot. He reminded me that once a slave, always a slave. Only the masters could cultivate. I just smiled and nodded, then went back to scrubbing. But I didn't stop. No matter what task I performed, my breathing stayed in that specific, rhythmic cycle. The noble children only practiced for 2 hours every morning. I had been doing it for 16 hours a day, every single day for the last 6 months. The only time I stopped was when I fell asleep. My family had been slaves to the Lin clan for generations. My grandfather was a slave, my father was a slave, and now I was one too. Unless something changed, I would eventually marry a maid, and my children would spend their lives serving the Lins. I had watched my grandfather starve to death because he was too old to work. I had watched my parents get beaten by guards for begging for his life, injuries that led to their early deaths. My father's final words were burned into my mind. Better to be a beggar than a slave. I was determined to change my fate. Late that night, the moon hung high over the river. The air was thick with the sound of frogs and insects. Thanks to the breathing techniques, I wasn't exhausted like the other servants. While they were snoring, I snuck down to a secluded spot by the water to wash. I stripped off my shirt, revealing a lean, muscular frame. In the moonlight, I didn't look like a lowly servant at all. I picked up a massive boulder, braced my core, and dropped into a low horse stance. I hadn't been taught the actual body tempering movements. The Lins kept those guarded, so I had to improvise. Squats, horse stances, and running with heavy weights were my only tools to build blood and chi. Sweat poured off me in thick beads, but my breathing never faltered. My father had once risked his life to ask a traveling cultivator about the basics of the path. That man told him the human body was like soil, and the spirit root was a seedling. Everyone had seedlings, but most were too weak to grow. To make the seedling sprout, the soil had to be fertile. That meant having a strong body and vibrant energy. I knew that in 2 months, immortals from the Taishian sect were coming to the Lin estate to test for spirit roots. This was my only chance. As I trained, ripples broke the glassy surface of the river. A long, white shadow, nearly 10 feet long, glided toward the bank. With a splash, a head emerged. It was a massive snake with snow-white scales. I didn't panic. I kept my breathing steady and smiled. I called her Xiaobai. I had saved her a year ago from the jaws of a predator. I had always felt a strange connection to animals, and they seemed to like me back. Even now, in the middle of summer, Not a single mosquito dared to bite me. Xiaobai slithered out of the water and nuzzled my forehead affectionately. Then, she opened her mouth and spat out a pearl that glowed with a soft, silver light. I was stunned. I had never seen a pearl so beautiful, not even on the jewelry of the Lin daughters. It looked incredibly valuable, but as a slave, I couldn't own anything. If I were caught with it, I'd be accused of theft. I told her I couldn't take it, but Xiaobai shook her head. She used her forked tongue to wrap around the pearl, lifted it to my lips, and tried to force it into my mouth. I stared at the pearl Xiaobai was nudging into my mouth, feeling a bit dazed. I took it, spitting out the bits of mud that clung to its surface. I looked at her, my voice muffled. I asked if she really wanted me to swallow it. Xiaobai nodded eagerly, her large head bobbing with certainty. I didn't think twice. I had raised her since she was small, and I knew she would never hurt me. I tilted my head back, and with a sharp gulp, I swallowed the pearl whole. Xiaobai watched me for a moment, then slithered over to a nearby rock and curled up, her eyes fixed on me as I resumed my training. At first, I felt nothing. But as the minutes ticked by, a warmth began to bloom in my stomach. It grew into a steady heat, flowing through my veins and meridians until it reached every corner of my body. The exhaustion that usually weighed me down vanished instantly. I felt like I could hold my horse stance for another hour. No, 2 hours. Then, the comfort turned into a scorching fire. My insides felt like they were being roasted. Thick beads of sweat poured off me, and steam actually began to rise from my forehead. My vision blurred. Just as I felt my consciousness slipping, I felt scaly coils wrap around my waist. Xiaobai dragged me into the river. I gasped, swallowing mouthfuls of water as the cool current fought the fire in my blood. As my mind cleared, I saw Xiaobai swimming circles around me. The water near my skin was literally steaming. Dark, foul-smelling impurities began to seep out of my pores, washed away by the river. After half an hour, the heat finally faded. I felt incredible. Every pore on my body felt like it was breathing the fresh morning air for the first time. I looked at the white snake and smiled. I told her she had given me a real treasure, a miracle of heaven and earth that only the immortals could dream of eating. I grabbed her and playfully rubbed her tongue, and she hissed back in excitement. I decided to try my breathing technique again. As I inhaled, I saw something I had never seen before. Tiny, silver specks of light flowing into my lungs. When I exhaled, a cloud of gray, murky air left my body. I remembered what the instructors told the young masters. Inhale the pure, exhale the turbid. I was seeing the spiritual energy of the world. My spirit root had awakened. Xiaobai nodded again, her eyes shining. I wanted to jump for joy, but when I tried to hug her, I realized how heavy she had become. Even though she was only 10 feet long, she felt as solid as iron. In the Lin estate, only 2 or 3 people out of hundreds were found to have spirit roots each year. This meant I finally had the chance to become a cultivator. I could look down on mortals. I could finally stop being a slave. Tears hit the water. I thought of my parents and my grandparents. I whispered to the empty air, telling them their girl was finally going to be someone. I wouldn't have to serve anyone ever again. The masters who looked down on me would one day have to kneel before me. I quickly regained my composure. I couldn't let anyone see this change before the immortals arrived. If the Lin family found out, I didn't know what they would do to me. I wasn't an immortal yet, and I wasn't going to gamble on their kindness. I had seen my grandfather starve to death and my parents beaten until they stopped moving. I knew of slaves who had their eyes gouged out just for practicing martial arts in secret. The Lin family wanted slaves to stay slaves forever. If they thought I might grow strong enough to seek revenge, they would kill me without hesitation. Suddenly, the grass rustled. A black shadow streaked toward me. It slammed into my chest and clung to my shirt. Neither Xiaobai nor I flinched. We were used to this. It was Xiao Chong, a cockroach the size of my palm with 2 massive, crab-like pincers. In his grip, he held a steaming, fragrant roasted chicken. He rubbed his head against my chest, acting cute, and handed over the prize. I tore into the meat immediately. I praised him, calling him a genius. Xiao Chong was a master thief. No matter how many guards or poisons the Lin family put in their kitchens, he always found a way in. He was so fast he was often just a blur. Without the high-quality food he stole from me every night, I never would have built the muscle I had now. The kitchen staff was losing their minds trying to catch him. They had even hired low-level mercenary cultivators, but Xiao Chong was too smart. He only struck when the cultivators weren't looking. He could even burrow through solid wood and granite in seconds. He was getting stronger every day, and I knew soon even iron wouldn't stop him. I finished the entire chicken and felt my strength returning. I walked to the bank and pulled a small, sharpened piece of iron from a crack in the rocks. I sliced a shallow cut into my fingers. Xiao Bai immediately took one finger into her mouth, her expression turning blissful. Xiao Chong climbed onto my other hand, hungrily drinking the droplets of blood. For some reason, my blood was like a drug to these creatures, and the more they drank, the faster they evolved. My blood was the key to their evolution. I knew that if they kept drinking, they would grow into massive beasts and gain human-like intelligence. Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong were already proof of that. Still, I had to be careful. I couldn't let them drink too much, or I'd become too weak to awaken my spirit root. For years, I had limited myself to just these two companions. After a few minutes, they both stopped. Xiao Bai's pink, forked tongue flicked out, gently licking the cuts on my fingers. As she did, the wounds closed and scabbed over right before my eyes. I looked down at them, a bit surprised. "That's it for today?" I asked. "Is my blood not to your taste now that I've awakened my spirit root?" They both shook their heads vigorously. Then, they both let out a loud, synchronized burp. Xiao Chong even patted his belly with a pincer to show he was stuffed. I laughed. It seemed my blood had become much more potent and filling now that I was no longer a commoner. "Once I join the immortal sect, I'll be able to raise a few more of you little guys," I promised. They rubbed against me affectionately. Then, with a sudden blur of motion, Xiao Chong vanished into the tall grass. Xiao Bai glided back into the river. "Xiao Bai," I called out. "I've heard geniuses are always guarded by fierce beasts. Don't take unnecessary risks. Stay safe." She turned back, nodded obediently, and dove into the depths. I sighed. She must have sensed my desperation to awaken my spirit root, which is why she risked her life for that pearl. Luckily, she won. Xiao Chong was useless in the water, or they could have hunted together. Back at the Lin estate, I played my part perfectly. I acted like the same numb, lowly servant I had always been. I bowed, I scraped, and I took the verbal abuse from the masters without a word. To stay safe, I stopped practicing my breathing techniques during the day. I couldn't risk anyone sensing the spiritual energy I was absorbing. But inside, I was changing. My energy was boundless. My strength grew every single day. I only needed 2 hours of sleep to feel fully recharged. My appetite, however, was becoming a problem. Xiao Chong now had to steal 5 chickens a night just to keep me fed. The kitchen staff went from annoyed to panicked. Losing 1 chicken was a nuisance. Losing 5 a day was a disaster. That was over 1,000 chickens a year. And these weren't ordinary birds. They were premium medicinal chickens raised on expensive herbs. After a week of this, the Lin family hired a professional cultivator, a man at the first level of qi refining, to guard the kitchen. That night, not only did the chickens disappear, but the cultivator woke up to find his clothes and pants had been stolen too. Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong were getting terrifyingly fast. The Lin family was so spooked they stopped even trying to guard the kitchen. They actually built a small shrine in the back and started leaving 5 roasted chickens as an offering every night. The servants whispered that as long as the chicken demon got his fill, the masters were safe. They prayed no one would provoke it. Only an immortal from the Taishan sect could stop such a thief, but the sect had bigger problems, like hunting actual demons. They didn't care about a rich family losing a few snacks. Eventually, I had Xiao Chong start stealing books too. I needed to learn to read the common script of the great Xian dynasty within 2 months. As a slave, I wasn't allowed to be literate. I used to linger near the family schoolhouse while working to pick up scraps of knowledge, but it wasn't enough. While I studied and trained, my 2 companions would sit by me, tilting their heads. I even heard Xiao by trying to mimic the sounds of the words I read. Xiao Chong just clicked his pincers. I guess some species are just faster learners. Every so often, Xiao Bai would bring me another pearl. Each time I ate one, black filth oozed from my pores. My body was being purified. My constitution became stronger, and the threads of spiritual energy I inhaled grew thicker. I was becoming as strong as an ox and as agile as a mountain monkey. A regular guard couldn't touch me now. 2 months flew by in a blur of secret training. Then, the news came down from the head steward. Tomorrow, the immortals of the Taishan sect would arrive. The entire estate was scrubbed until it sparkled. Everyone was vibrating with excitement. To see an immortal was considered the blessing of a lifetime. For those with a spirit root, it was the chance to change their destiny forever. After a long day of serving the masters, I returned to the filthy servants' quarters with my roommate, Wang Er. He was a timid guy with a face full of pockmarks. He was shaking, his fists clenched tight. "Lin Yuan," he whispered urgently. "What if the immortals sense that I'm a hidden genius? What if they insist on taking me away to learn the way of long life? I'm just a guy who chops wood and mops floors. I don't know if I can handle the responsibility of saving the world." I looked out at the stars. Maybe in the immortal sects, chopping wood and mopping floors is a form of cultivation too. Maybe it helps you live longer. Except, you'd be chopping wood made of gold and mopping floors made of jade. Wang Er's eyes lit up. "You're right. Why didn't I think of that? Hey, are you coming to wash up at the river?" "No," I said. "Last time I went with you, the mosquitoes nearly ate me alive. I'm jealous they never bite you." "The steward says it's because my life is too cheap even for bugs," Wang Er joked. "I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow, I might be off to save the world, and maybe marry a couple of fairy goddesses like in the stories." "Dream on," I muttered under my breath. Once I heard him snoring, I slipped out into the shadows. I reached the high perimeter wall of the Lin estate and cleared it in a single, effortless leap. No one saw a thing. It was time for one last night of preparation. I headed down to the river, to a hidden corner where Yi Lin always spent her time. Xiao Chong had already been busy. He'd managed to steal 5 fragrant roasted chickens for us. Nearby, Xiao Bai was lounging lazily on a large flat rock. A book lay open in front of her, the pages fluttering occasionally in the cool breeze. Over the last 2 months of feeding them, Xiao Chong had grown significantly. He was now the size of a small watermelon, and his carapace looked thicker and harder than ever. Xiao Bai was even more impressive. She hadn't just learned to speak simple words, she had learned to read. She was actually learning faster than me. I had a sinking feeling that my literacy level was already falling behind a snake's. It was a strange realization. As soon as I stepped out of the shadows, Xiao Chong blurred into motion. He scurried over and hugged my leg, making happy chirping sounds. "Master," Xiao Bai said. Her voice was soft and slender, sounding like a girl in her early teens. She could speak now, though it wasn't perfectly fluent yet. She mostly stuck to key words. She had taught herself the word master. I had told her to just call me Yi Lin since I saw them as partners and friends, but she seemed genuinely terrified of using my name directly. I nodded and reached out, stroking Xiao Chong's head, and then Xiao Bai's. "Tomorrow, the immortals from the Taishan sect are coming to the Lin estate to test our spirit roots. This is my best chance to change my life. But if my plan works and they take me away to the sect, what happens to you two?" I felt a wave of sadness. Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong were huge now. If they followed me, the Taishan sect elders would spot them instantly and probably kill them as monsters. But I owed everything to them. Without their help, I wouldn't be where I am today. I couldn't just leave them here to rot while I chased immortality. It was an impossible choice. Xiao Bai nudged my hand gently. "Master." "Ring." "Blood." I froze for a second. I pulled off the dull gray ring I had worn for years. "You mean this?" Xiao Bai nodded earnestly. "Ring. Take us." The ring looked ancient, but worthless. It was covered in messy, worm-like carvings that had no rhythm or beauty. It was a Yi family heirloom. Because it looked like junk, the Lin family had never bothered to take it from us. My grandfather and father had both worn it for decades. They never mentioned it having any special powers. "You want me to soak it in blood?" I asked, feeling skeptical. My dad and grandpa were laborers. They were always getting cut, bruised, or beaten by stewards. Their blood must have hit this ring 1,000 times. Nothing ever happened. "Master." "Great insect," Xiao Bai whispered. I frowned. "Great insect? What is that?" 10,000 rings. "Great insect," she struggled to explain. It sounded powerful, even if I didn't fully understand it. "All right, I'll try. I hope you're right." Xiao Chong pulled a small blade from a crack in the rocks. I practiced a quick cut on my finger and let the blood drip onto the metal. To my shock, the blood didn't slide off. It soaked in. The entire ring turned a deep, vibrant crimson. Suddenly, a spiritual connection snapped into place. My vision blurred. I saw an old man with white hair and a face full of deep wrinkles. His eyes were like a snake's, eerie and captivating. He looked at me with a kind smile and reached out to pat my head. His voice echoed directly in my mind. Child, this is the great insect ancient realm, the ultimate treasure of the Yi family, the ancient insect tamer clan. Activating this realm proves you have awakened the great insect bloodline. You are a talent rarely seen in 1,000 years. He explained that the realm had 3 powers. First, it was a self-contained space that could hold exotic insects. Second, any insect raised inside would have a much higher chance of mutating and awakening ancient bloodlines. Third, they would grow at an incredible speed, though it would require a price from me. As he finished, the old man's image began to crumble. His voice grew faint. Child, for the sake of our ancestors, you must survive in this cruel cultivation world at all costs. Restore the glory of the Yi family. Then he vanished. I stood there, pale and breathless. I couldn't speak for a long time. So, I whispered to myself. We weren't just slaves for the Lin family for generations. We were a clan of ancient beast tamers. My ancestors just never awakened the bloodline. I carefully put the ring back on. With a single thought, the crimson ring vanished from my finger. Another thought, and it reappeared. Xiao Chong turned into a black shadow and shrank, zipping into the ring. Xiao Bai followed as a white streak. Inside my mind, I saw a small desert about 10 meters wide. There was no water, no wind, and no life. Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong lay there, instantly falling into a deep sleep. With another thought, I brought them back out. Immediately, my face went pale. My stomach ached, and my head throbbed. I felt like I had just pulled a double shift without sleep. I rubbed my temples, trying to stay upright. Bringing them out took a massive toll on my energy. What an incredible treasure, I muttered. There are definitely more secrets in here. We'll explore them once we get to the sect. Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong nodded like little chicks pecking at grain. I cut another finger to feed them one last time, then tucked them safely back into the ring. Storing them cost nothing. It was only the release that drained me. I headed back to the servant quarters and collapsed onto my bed. When I opened my eyes again, the sun was just peeking over the horizon. Wang Er was already up, buzzing with energy as he put on his clean servant robes. I got dressed too. Under the steward's orders, we served the young masters their breakfast. Once that was done, the entire Lin estate gathered at the martial arts field. Everyone was looking at the sky, waiting for the immortals to descend. The Lin family had made their fortune in the silk trade. Their fabrics were famous across the province. Even the local prince was said to buy from them. The head of the house, Old Master Lin, stood at the front. He looked revitalized, his eyes fixed on the clouds. The moment we had all been waiting for was finally here. The morning air felt fresh, like a spring breeze. The head instructor, who was responsible for training the children, bowed deeply to Old Master Lin. He reported that 3 children in the estate had already successfully sensed spiritual energy and awakened their spirit roots. Their names were Lin Xiaoyu, Lin Yuan, and Lin Xiang. Old Master Lin stroked his white beard, his soft gaze sweeping over the 3 children. He nodded repeatedly, a proud smile on his face. He told them they were the pride of the Lin family. He said that if even one of them reached the foundation establishment stage, the family business could expand far beyond this province. He also encouraged the other children not to lose heart. Sensation was just the first step. The immortal master would soon arrive to test everyone individually. My eyes drifted toward the 3 lucky ones. Lin Xiaoyu was the young miss of the main branch. She was dressed in exquisite silks and looked quite proud after receiving the old master's praise. She vowed to reach the foundation establishment stage and expand the family's glory. Lin Yuan followed suit, promising to look after his kin in the sect and even find an elixir to grant the old master eternal youth. Then there was Lin Xiang. He seemed dull and clumsy. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but he stuttered and eventually fell silent. I could tell he came from an ignored side branch of the family. His clothes weren't nearly as flashy as the other 2. Old Master Lin laughed heartily and ordered the steward to fetch 3 black iron swords. The other children looked on with pure envy. I felt it too. Each of those swords was worth 1,000 gold bars. It was said that once refined by immortal techniques, they could kill demons with a single thought. The steward brought the weapons out. When he unsheathed one, the cold glint of the blade made the hair on my neck stand up. Even though my body was strong enough to fight tigers, I had no doubt that blade could slice me in half like paper. Each sword weighed 36 pounds, forged over 49 days by master smiths. The 3 children took their weapons. Even though they were only 11 or 12, their physical training and awakened spirit roots meant they could handle the heavy steel with ease. They thanked the old master in unison. Just then, a massive, flat-flying vessel descended from the clouds. The words Taishin Sect were emblazoned on its side. My heart hammered against my ribs. Old Master Lin shouted for everyone to welcome the immortals. All 531 members of the Lin estate dropped to their knees. We knelt as if the emperor himself had arrived. The ship hovered 60 feet in the air. A middle-aged man in purple and green robes leaped from the deck. He had long, flowing hair and 2 swords strapped to his back. He landed as light as a feather. This was the envoy of the Taishin sect. "Rise," he said. His voice didn't just hit my ears, it echoed directly in my mind. It was gentle but impossible to resist. We all stood up involuntarily. Old Master Lin stepped forward with a small jade box. He called it a humble gift. The immortal nodded, and as soon as his hand touched the box, it vanished into a small pouch at his waist. I recognized it immediately, a spatial bag. People said those tiny bags could hold mountains and rivers. I felt a small spark of pride. My bug world was surely better than that. I heard spatial bags couldn't hold living things, but mine could. Of course, I kept that thought hidden. I was just a servant who had only learned to read 2 months ago, but I knew the danger of showing off wealth. I kept the ring's presence completely suppressed. The immortal didn't notice a thing. The steward whispered that the jade box likely contained a century-old spirit herb, something far more valuable than the black iron swords. He then informed the immortal that 45 children were waiting to be tested. The immortal tapped his spatial bag. A golden light flashed, and a bronze compass appeared in his hand, engraved with the 5 elements. With a flick of his finger, the compass buzzed and flew toward Lin Xiaoyu. It glowed with a bronze light, and the characters for fire and water lit up. Mid-grade fire root, low-grade water root, the immortal announced. Superior talent. You may join the Taishin sect. Lin Xiaoyu knelt in gratitude. She was told to stand behind him. From that moment on, she wasn't just a rich girl. She was an immortal disciple. Her fate had changed forever. The compass moved to Lin Yuan. Low-grade metal root. Accepted. Then to Lin Xiang. Low-grade wood and water roots. Not bad. Accepted. The compass then scanned the remaining 42 children. One by one, it stayed dark. Disappointment washed over the crowd. The gap between the chosen 3 and the rest of us felt like the distance between heaven and earth. Yesterday they were peers. Tomorrow, the others would have to kowtow out to them. But I wasn't finished. I stepped out from the crowd of servants. "Immortal Master," I called out. My voice was loud, ringing across the entire field. "I have sensed the spiritual energy. I wish to be tested." I stood there in my coarse servant robes, but I didn't feel small anymore. Every head turned toward me. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Everyone's face went pale with shock. Old Master Lin's gaze tightened. He looked like he wanted to stop me, but he didn't say a word. Here, the immortal master called the shots. To interfere would be a grave insult to the sect, and nobody was that foolish. Besides, the more disciples an envoy brought back, especially talented ones, the greater the rewards he received from the Taishin sect. That was exactly why I dared to take this gamble. The immortal master's expression didn't change. He remained calm and approachable, but as his eyes swept over me, I felt naked. It was as if he could see through my skin, my bones, and my very soul. "A brave child," he said softly. "If you truly possess a spirit root, you shall use it to slay demons for our sect." With a wave of his hand, the bronze compass flew from his palm and hovered over my head. A bronze light washed over me. Suddenly, the spiritual energy inside my body began to stir, flowing through my meridians of its own accord. I looked up. The characters for gold, wood, water, fire, and earth all began to glow. They didn't just flicker, they shone with a brilliant, steady radiance. The immortal master's face finally shifted. Mid-grade gold root. Mid-grade wood. Water. Fire. Earth. He stared in silence for a long moment, stunned. Then, he spoke the words that changed my life forever. Excellent. You may enter the Tai Xian sect to pursue the path of immortality. I collapsed to my knees, my heart hammering against my ribs. I kowtowed so hard my forehead hit the dirt, drawing blood. Thank you, immortal master, for this chance. He waved his sleeve, and a soft, cool breeze lifted me back to my feet. In my life, I have tested thousands of children. I have never seen someone whose 5-element roots were perfectly balanced, let alone all at the mid-grade. It is rare. Child, what is your name? My name is Yi Ling. I replied, my voice trembling. Good. Yi Ling, from this moment on, you are no longer a lowly servant. You are a cultivator of the Tai Xian sect. He struck the massive flying boat with a burst of spiritual energy. A hatch opened at the bottom of the vessel, and a powerful suction pulled me upward. I felt weightless as I flew toward the opening, alongside the 3 Lin children who were still clutching their black iron swords. The crowd below was frozen. They looked like statues, paralyzed by what they had just witnessed. Nobody expected a servant, someone they had stepped on, beaten, and insulted, to leap into the heavens in a single bound. In the blink of an eye, I was above them all. If I ever returned, even old Master Lin would have to kneel before me. As I rose, I looked down at the Lin estate one last time. My gaze was cold. There was no hatred in my eyes, but there was no joy either. I looked up at the sky, at the giant ship waiting to carry me away. I had done it. The flying boat was massive, nearly 100 feet long and 30 feet wide. It looked like it had been carved from a single, gargantuan piece of wood with no seams or joints. On the ground, it looked big. On deck, I felt like an ant. This was the craftsmanship of the immortals. 2 women sat in the middle of the deck, meditating with their eyes closed. Their long hair danced in the wind, and they wore elegant light blue Taoist robes. They looked young, but in this world, appearances meant nothing. They glanced at the 4 of us, their eyes lingering on my tattered, faded servant clothes. They looked confused. This ship usually collected children from great clans. I looked like I belonged in a stable. We hurried to bow. Greetings, immortals. The middle-aged man who had tested us spoke up. This boy is Yi Ling. He was a servant, but his talent is remarkable. A balanced 5-element root, all mid-grade. A rare sprout. The 2 women looked surprised and gave me a second glance. One of them nodded. No need for such formality. You may call us senior sisters. I am senior sister Zhou, and this is senior sister Wu. We are outer sect disciples. Senior brother Wang, who brought you here, is from the inner sect. We bowed again, greeting each of them properly. You may move freely on the deck, senior sister Zhou said with a faint smile. We have 6 more clans to visit in Luoyang Prefecture before we head back. It should take about a day to reach the sect. The Tai Xian sect sat atop Tai Xian Mountain in the Xuanlong Range. Luoyang was right at the foot of those mountains. For this boat, it was a short trip. For a mortal on a fast horse, it would take days of hard riding. The 2 women closed their eyes and returned to their meditation. Senior brother Wang waved his hand, and the boat began to accelerate, angling sharply toward the clouds. The wind howled. We grabbed the railing, staring down as the Lin estate shrank into a tiny dot. Lin Xiaoyu's eyes welled with tears. Father, mother, great-grandfather, please stay healthy, she whispered. When I return, I will be at the foundation establishment stage. I'll surprise you all. In the Tai Xian sect, once you entered, you were expected to sever your ties to the mortal world. Unless there was an urgent matter, you weren't allowed to go home. I had seen Lin children leave before. Many were never heard from again. No letters, no news. Nobody knew if they were powerful or if they were even still alive. Only those who reached the foundation establishment stage earned the freedom to travel. For us, who hadn't even started qi refining, that goal felt as distant as the stars. Lin Yuan and Lin Xiang stood with flushed faces, their fists clenched as they fought back tears. I watched the world below disappear into a sea of white mist. My heart was a mess of emotions. This place was a cage where my ancestors had lived and died. My parents were buried in that dirt. Soon, the clouds blocked everything. We were sailing through a sea of white. Lin Xiaoyu, the girl I used to serve, turned to look at me. Her expression was complicated, part curiosity, part worry. She bit her lip before finding the courage to speak. Yiling, she said softly, I know the people in our household didn't treat you well. In the future, I will try to look after you, to make up for it. She took a breath. Once we enter the sect, our mortal lives are over. I don't expect us to be best friends, but I hope you won't hold a grudge against my brothers and me. If you have to hate someone, hate me. We aren't young masters or ladies anymore. We are fellow disciples. We are equals now. Let's just start over. Lin Xiaoyu was a daughter of a great family, raised with the best education and a sharp mind. She understood the shifting tides of power better than her brothers. I looked at her, my expression neutral. I didn't want to hate them. It felt pointless. My father had taught me to distinguish between those who personally wronged me and those who were just part of the system. In the Lin household, the weak were always trampled. I knew that better than anyone. I wouldn't forgive the manager who let my grandfather starve, or the servants who beat my parents to death. I wouldn't forget the master who allowed it all to happen. But these three? I had never served them directly. They weren't the ones who swung the clubs. To kill an entire family of hundreds for the crimes of a few felt wrong, and the Taishin sect, a righteous path, wouldn't tolerate such bloodlust anyway. Lin Xiaoyu gave me a sweet, relieved smile. She reached into her belongings and pulled out a stunning weapon. It was a black iron sword, a blade worth 1,000 taels of gold. She held it out to me without a second thought. I stared at the cold metal, surprised. Lin Yuan and Lin Xiang gaped at her in shock. She told me not to be polite. She explained that she had an older brother and sister already in the sect, and her sister was an inner disciple who would surely give her a divine weapon soon. She wouldn't need this one. She also warned me that while all new disciples received a sword, the standard issue ones were mass-produced junk compared to this family heirloom. I looked at the sword. Part of me ached for it. In my world, a sword meant power. It meant respect. It was the mark of a hero, a general, or a cultivator. As a former slave, I craved that dignity more than anything. But I had my principles now. I was no longer a servant. I told her that I didn't take rewards I hadn't earned. I didn't hate her, but I wouldn't accept her charity either. If I wanted a sword, I would buy one myself later. Lin Xiaoyu's smile turned awkward as she pulled the blade back. I didn't feel like talking anymore. I walked to a quiet corner of the deck, sat down cross-legged, and began my breathing exercises. Behind me, I heard Lin Yuan let out a low, angry huff. He muttered about how a lowly servant shouldn't act so high and mighty. He said if we were still at home, he would have had my legs broken. Lin Xiang tried to quiet him down, whispering about how my parents had died when I was 10 and how hard my life had been. Lin Yuan just glared at him until he shut up. The flying boat didn't stop. We spent the next half-day picking up more children from other powerful clans across Luoyang province. By the time we were done, there were 37 of us on board. The deck was crowded with kids in silk robes, showing off their own family blades and laughing about their bright futures. Lin Xiaoyu was a natural leader. She was beautiful, talented, and smart. She easily became the center of the group. A few people tried to come over and talk to me, mostly because the inner disciple had praised my talent earlier. But I turned them all away. I told them I needed to practice. The truth was, I didn't know how to talk to people like them. I felt more comfortable talking to the insects in my hidden world than to these wealthy teenagers. Finally, the two female cultivators announced we were heading straight for the Taishin sect. But the weather had other plans. As we flew over a desolate mountain range, the sky turned black. Wind howled, and thunder shook the air. Within minutes, a torrential downpour soaked us to the bone. We looked like drowned rats, while the cultivators stood perfectly dry, protected by a faint glow of spiritual energy. The other kids didn't care about the rain. They were too busy bragging about what they knew of the immortal world. The boat had protective arrays, so we weren't supposed to worry about lightning. To be safe, Senior Brother Wang lowered the boat to fly just 100 meters above the ground, slowing our speed. I was sitting in the rain, eyes closed, when I suddenly felt a jolt of alarm. My connection to the bugs in my space was screaming. They were terrified. I snapped my eyes open just as a massive bolt of lightning tore through the clouds. It didn't strike a tree or a mountain peak. It came straight for us. Senior Brother Wang's face paled. He slammed his hand onto the deck, funneling spiritual energy into the ship's formations. A translucent shield shimmered into existence just in time. The world turned blinding white. A deafening roar filled my ears, and the smell of ozone was everywhere. The boat shook violently, throwing children across the deck. Screams erupted as everyone huddled together, trembling in fear. After a few seconds, the vibrations stopped. Senior Brother Wang let out a shaky breath. One of the female disciples tried to force a smile, saying it was just bad luck and that the lightning avoidance array should have handled it. But she didn't finish her sentence. Another bolt of blue electricity hissed down from the dark clouds. It was aimed directly at the center of the boat. This wasn't an accident. We were being hunted. Senior Brother Wang's face twisted in horror. This was bad. He screamed for the others to activate the Tai Xian talismans immediately. He gritted his teeth and poured every last drop of his spiritual energy into the boat's defenses. The shield flickered back to life, but a split second later, a thunderous boom shook the very foundations of the world. I closed my eyes tight, but the flash was so blinding I could see the white light right through my eyelids. While I was blinded, Senior Sister Wu grabbed a golden talisman from her storage bag and tossed it into the air. It was a Tai Xian signal. She shouted for reinforcements, and the paper transformed into a streak of golden light, vanishing into the clouds in an instant. The boat didn't survive the next strike. The lightning slammed into us again, and this time, our luck ran out. The ship lurched, the steering failed, and we began a terminal descent toward the earth. Then came the explosions. One after another, the bottom of the boat ripped apart. With a sickening metallic snap, the entire vessel split into 7 or 8 massive chunks. My face went pale. I lunged for the railing, gripping it with white knuckles as I plummeted toward the ground. We weren't that high up, maybe 100 meters, and I knew my body was tougher than an average kid's. Below us was a dense forest. If I hit the trees right, I might actually live. Impact. My section of the boat smashed into a massive banyan tree. The trunk exploded under the force, and the tree toppled over as I slammed into the dirt. My head was spinning. Pain flared through every inch of my body, and I could feel branches poking into my skin. My bones felt like they'd been put through a grinder. I laid there for a long time, just breathing. Finally, I crawled out from under a jagged piece of wreckage. My heart was hammering against my ribs. What was happening? Then I heard it. A cold, piercing laugh echoed through the woods. Haha, look at all these little brats, a voice boomed. Grab the ones who are still breathing. They'll make perfect subjects for corpse puppets, or maybe just furnace slaves. We really have to thank the Tai Xian sect for this gift. Another voice joined in, mocking and cruel. Those hypocrites have gotten soft, sending out recruits without a single Foundation establishment cultivator to guard them. I guess the Tai Xian sect really has been rotting for the last few hundred years. Ooh, look at these outer sect girls, a third voice sneered. Only at the 4th level of chi condensation and they think they can travel the world? Don't let them kill themselves. I want them alive. The forest turned into a nightmare. I heard children screaming and crying, the frantic shouts of the disciples, and the maniacal laughter of the intruders. Rain lashed down, mixing with the roar of thunder. My blood ran cold. These were demonic cultivators. Even a 3-year-old knew they were monsters who killed without blinking. I had to run. It was obvious our protectors had been overwhelmed by the ambush. To these killers, we weren't even human. We were just resources. I wasn't going to be anyone's puppet. I scrambled into the thickest part of the brush, pulling leaves over my body to hide. I held my breath, trying to quiet the sound of my heart, which felt loud enough to give me away. Every second felt like an eternity. After a short while, a shadow fell over the clearing. An ugly, middle-aged woman in blood-red robes stepped into view. A massive bat perched on her shoulder, chirping and twitching its ears. "Is there a little mouse hiding here?" she cooed, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Come out, little one. Let's play hide and seek. If I find you, I'm taking you home to be my personal furnace." She licked her lips and walked right past my bush. I waited until her footsteps faded, my lungs burning from holding my breath. I finally let out a quiet gasp for air, and that's when a hand clamped onto my left ankle. "Gotcha," she hissed. "And what a handsome little thing you are." I nearly jumped out of my skin. I lashed out with my right foot, kicking with everything I had, but she caught that one too. She lifted me up by my legs like I was a chicken headed for slaughter. I swung my body up, clawing at her face, but she just leaned back and laughed. "Feisty. I like that. Come home with me, boy." She threw her head back, laughing at my struggle. That was her mistake. A black blur, no bigger than a palm, flashed from my hand. There was a wet thud. A massive hole appeared right in the middle of the woman's forehead. Her laughter froze. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock, but the light was already fading. She didn't even see the giant cockroach perched on her head, its twin pincers dripping with blood and brains. "Die," I whispered, my voice cold. Xiao Chong didn't hesitate. It jammed its pincers into the wound and twisted, turning her insides into a red and white slurry. I didn't care about hiding my secret anymore. It was her life or mine. At this range, and with her guard completely down, she didn't stand a chance. Xiao Chong's pincers could cut through steel plates now. Her skull was like paper. She collapsed into the mud, dead before she could even scream. I didn't waste a second. I recalled Xiao Chong back into the bronze bug ring. I didn't know how her cultivation level compared to my bug, but I knew one thing. If she had been prepared, we wouldn't have won so easily. I didn't panic and bolt. Instead, I took a long look at her body and then quietly slipped into a different patch of trees 50 meters away. Running now was suicide. The forest was crawling with her friends. I had to wait. If Tai Xian reinforcements arrived, the demons would scatter. That was my only real chance. As for the body, I'd just play dumb. No one saw Xiao Chong, and no one could sense the ring. I looked at the storage bag hanging from her waist. It probably had treasures inside, but I forced myself to look away. Taking it would be a death sentence. If the Tai Xian elders found a mortal kid with a demon's bag, they'd have questions I couldn't answer. Greed kills. I waited. A few minutes later, more footsteps approached. 2 men in red robes stepped into the clearing. "The smell of blood is strong here," one muttered, frowning. "Did one of the Tai Xian kids die?" "I saw the old crone come this way," the other said, looking around. "I can't feel her aura anymore." They grew cautious, moving slowly toward the brush where the body lay. They pushed the branches aside and stopped dead. "Damn it, the crone is dead." "How?" "She was at the 5th level of chi condensation. How could she die here without making a sound?" The 2 men examined the body. One of them guessed she had been killed by a hidden chi-based artifact that crushed her skull. They suspected another cultivator was hiding nearby, someone weak who hadn't managed to flee yet. They decided to hunt them down. I held my breath, my heart slowing to a crawl. I was huddled deep inside a thicket of dense leaves, watching them inch closer. The smell of blood was thick, and they knew I was close. I gritted my teeth, staying deathly still. I was injured, and the old woman's blood was splattered all over me from when Xiao Chong crushed her head. I didn't panic. I prepared myself to release both Xiao Chong and Xiao Bai for a desperate ambush, but I didn't know if it would work. These men were on guard. Using both bugs at once would push my mental energy to the breaking point. Just as they were within 2 minutes of finding me, a streak of light cut across the sky. A terrifying pressure descended from above. Demons of the Blood Shadow sect. How dare you attack a transport boat of the Tai Xian sect? Die, a voice thundered. At the same time, a bloody red light shot up from the forest to meet it. A voice sneered back, why wouldn't I dare? Everyone retreat. I'll hold off this Taoist Xianling. The 2 men near me froze. Their faces paled at the arrival of a Foundation establishment cultivator. They shared a quick look, grabbed the old woman's corpse, and leaped onto their flying swords. One of them shot a final, suspicious glance toward my thicket before they both vanished into the trees as streaks of red light. I let out a massive, ragged breath. I had been holding it so long my face was white. I had nearly suffocated myself to death. High above, the battle raged. I could only see a blue blur and a red blur clashing. The air echoed with the thunderous cracks of artifacts colliding and bolts of lightning striking the demon's thick spiritual shield. They fought for dozens of breaths, neither side gaining the upper hand, though the Tai Xian cultivator seemed to have the slight advantage. Once the ground-level demons had escaped, the red shadow didn't linger. "Xianling, we'll meet again," the demon shouted. "It won't be long before I reach the middle stage of Foundation establishment. Then, we'll see who wins." The demon spat out a mouthful of blood and transformed into a streak of crimson mist, vanishing from sight. The man called Xianling landed, his brow furrowed in a deep scowl. He looked at the carnage on the ground, his voice trembling with rage. "Sinners, one day, I will wipe out your blood shadow hall to avenge every fallen brother." Soon, more lights arrived. These were outer disciples at the Qi condensation stage. They landed their swords and bowed respectfully. Xianling sighed heavily, telling them they were too late. He ordered them to search for survivors and collect the bodies of their fallen kin for burial in the Taishan Tower. The rain finally stopped. The clouds parted, and the red glow of the setting sun illuminated the wreckage of the forest. Once I was sure the danger had passed, I crawled out of the brush, my face ghostly pale. The sight was horrific. I saw the bodies of 2 female disciples, their clothes torn, their ends clearly miserable. I saw the severed head of senior brother Wang, the man who had tested our spirit roots. His body was nowhere to be found. I saw the children of noble families, kids who had been so full of hope just hours ago, crushed under the debris of the flying boat. Limbs were scattered everywhere. The demons had planned this perfectly. With a Foundation establishment leader and a horde of disciples, they had overwhelmed the 3 Taishan guards the moment the boat crashed. It had been a massacre. They had kidnapped the surviving children and brutalized the disciples. I clenched my fists. This morning, these people were revered immortals. Now, they were ghosts who had suffered unspeakable indignity before death. Is this the world of cultivation? A young woman in a light blue robe walked up to me, forcing a small, pained smile. "Yes," she said softly. "This is the cultivation world. Being alive is already a blessing. You haven't officially joined the sect yet. By the rules, you can choose to go back. We'll send a boat for you. Are you afraid?" I shook my head. "Senior sister, I'm not afraid. I've already seen things more cruel and heartbreaking than this." She blinked, surprised by my words. "You're so young, yet you sound so old. What's your name? I need to register you." You might be the only survivor. The others are either dead or taken by the demons. Those poor children." "My name is Lin Yuan," I replied. "I am Lin Xiaoxin," she said, "an inner disciple. You can call me Senior Sister Lin." I paused. "Senior Sister, do you know a girl named Lin Xiaoyu? Your names are similar. She's the daughter of the Lin family from Luoyang Prefecture." Lin Xiaoxin's face went white. "I know her. She's my sister. My biological sister." She didn't wait for another word. She began frantically searching through the bodies they had collected. Eventually, she broke down, sobbing. "Xiaoyu. She must have been taken. When I left home, she was only 6. She was so smart, so cute. She's only 12 or 13 now." I watched her howl in grief and felt a hollow ache in my chest. "Senior sister," I whispered, "you said being alive is a blessing. At least she's still alive. We can save her from the demon sect later." Lin Xiaoxin just shook her head violently, her world collapsing. "You don't understand." A male disciple nearby sighed and looked at me. For her, dying here might have been a mercy. "Junior brother, do you know what a furnace is?" I shook my head. "I didn't know." "You'll understand eventually," he said grimly. "In short, it is a fate worse than death." I felt a heavy weight settle in my gut. I fell silent, my heart feeling like it was buried under a mountain. As night fell, huge fires were lit in the forest. The remains of the disciples and the children turned into ash and smoke. More cultivators arrived, some from Taishan, some from other sects. They stood around the fires, staring at the ruins of a dream that had turned into a nightmare. The other cultivators could only shake their heads and sigh before they eventually left. Once the fires burned out, the ashes were gathered into a large ceramic jar. Lin Xiaoxin placed the jar carefully into her spatial bag. She had recovered slightly from the initial shock and grief, but she remained silent, her face pale. The blow was clearly devastating. High above, Daoist Xianling stood at the bow of the massive flying boat, watching everything. A male cultivator grabbed me and flew upward, landing us on the deck. I followed the example of the others and bowed respectfully. Daoist Xianling was a handsome man with graying hair at his temples, but his face was smooth and free of wrinkles. His gaze felt heavy, like it could pierce straight through my soul. As his eyes swept over me, I felt like every secret I owned was about to be exposed. Rise, Daoist Xianling said calmly. Child, you are Yiling, correct? You are the only one who survived this disaster long enough to be rescued. Answer a few questions for me. I felt my throat tighten with nerves. Please ask, Martial Uncle. The distress talisman only mentioned an attack. How exactly did the boat fall? I told him the truth. The boat was hit by lightning twice. A shield blocked them, but then something hit the bottom of the ship and it shattered. I grabbed the railing and hid in a hollow space. I was lucky I wasn't crushed. Daoist Xianling nodded slowly. I see. It seems the Blood Shadow sect calculated this well. They knew a thunderstorm was coming and tracked our route. They hid their presence in the mountains, used a lightning attraction formation to drain the shields, and then struck from below. He looked at me again. How did you hide from the demon sect? Their disciples breed man-eating bats. Those creatures can smell a living human from hundreds of meters away. After the crash, I hid in the bushes, I explained. I tried not to breathe or make a sound. When the villains came close, I held my breath entirely. Once they moved away, I took tiny sips of air. The bats did eventually find me, but by then, you had arrived, Martial Uncle. The demons were too busy fleeing to catch me. Daoist Xianling gave a slight nod. Your ability to hide your presence is decent, but your survival was mostly luck. The heavy rain likely dulled the bat's sense of smell. He reached into his spatial bag and pulled out a bronze compass. The disciple who tested you before has perished. I will test you again for the entry records. He flicked a finger, sending a burst of spiritual energy into the compass. It hummed and flew above my head. Under the gaze of dozens of people, 5 large characters, gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, all began to glow brightly. Daoist Xianling blinked in surprise. The surrounding disciples whispered in shock. All 5 elements, and all are mid-grade spirit roots, he muttered. This is rare. You aren't exactly a supreme genius, but your talent is excellent. Child, you can practice spells from any of the 5 elements. There are no taboos for you. He paused, his voice turning serious. But remember, the 5 elements generate and destroy one another. If your cultivation methods clash, like water and fire, you risk your body exploding. You must be careful. I bowed deeply. I don't yet understand these principles, but I will remember your teachings, Martial Uncle. He reached into his bag again and pulled out a small porcelain bottle. The eyes of every cultivator nearby lit up with envy. These are 5 chi-gathering pills, he said. They will greatly increase your efficiency in absorbing spiritual energy. Each pill lasts 3 days. Take them to increase your strength and reach the first level of chi refining as soon as possible. I didn't hesitate. I took the bottle with both hands. Thank you, Martial Uncle. You survived a situation where death was almost certain, he added. You are a person of great fortune. Work hard. Do not waste this chance. In the future, you must do great things for the sect and eliminate demons for the sake of all living beings. I obey, I said, tucking the bottle into a small pouch at my waist and bowing again. With a wave of his hand, the massive boat rose into the clouds, heading toward the Xuanlong Mountains and our final destination, the Taishan sect. Lin Xiaoxin stepped forward to give her report. Reporting to Martial Uncle. In this disaster, 1 inner disciple and 2 outer disciples were killed. 12 children died, and 24 are missing. There is only 1 survivor. Daoist Xianling stared into the distance, his expression grim. The demon sects are becoming more active. The cultivation world of the Xuanlong Mountains is shifting. Our future is uncertain. You must all practice hard. If you lack strength, you will be the next to die. I used to think the cultivation world was a beautiful place. I imagined immortals flying through the sky, living forever, and chasing the great Tao in peace. But before I had even officially joined the sect, the world had shown me its teeth. I felt lucky. I was lucky I had been practicing my breathing in the corner before the crash. I was lucky I had found a spot to hide. Most importantly, I was lucky I had raised my powerful beetle, Xiao Chong, and possessed the ancient ring. Without those, my journey would have ended before it even began. The exhaustion finally caught up to me. Once the adrenaline faded, I leaned against the railing and fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up, the sunset was gone. The boat was gliding smoothly through the vast night sky. Stars sparkled above like diamonds, and the moonlight was as clear as water. Most of the Tai Xian disciples were sitting cross-legged on the deck, meditating. I could see faint purple wisps of spiritual energy being drawn into their bodies. Taoist Xianling was still at the bow. His hair and robes fluttered in the night wind as he stared into the darkness, either standing guard or lost in thought. I stood up and stretched my stiff limbs. Below us, the boat passed over jagged mountain peaks. I could hear the faint roars of wild beasts echoing from the forests. We were deep in the Xuanlong Mountains now, a place where humans rarely set foot. Legends said that not only were there immortal sects here, but also powerful demons and monsters. Even the bravest hunters wouldn't dare enter this far. The air after the rain was crisp and fresh. My mood lifted, and the shadow over my heart began to fade. Growing up as a slave had made me tougher than other 13-year-olds. I could handle more than most. After another hour of flying, the terrain below began to change. I saw pavilions and towers emerging from the landscape, with lights flickering in the distance. The other disciples finished their meditation and stood up. They were smiling, looking like travelers who had finally spotted their hometown. We were finally arriving at the Tai Xian sect. I walked toward the railing to get a better look, but before I could, I was suddenly surrounded. A group of beautiful female senior sisters crowded around me, chirping excitedly as they began to introduce me to my new home. I realized pretty quickly why so many senior female disciples were being so kind to me. It wasn't just because I was decent looking, though I'm sure that didn't hurt. The real reason was my talent. Even Taoist Xianling had high expectations for me. In the world of cultivators, people like to invest early. They wanted to earn my favor before I became powerful. Junior Brother Yi, one of the sisters said, pointing toward the landscape below. We've entered the outer perimeter of the sect. This area is mostly for servant disciples. You see those vast forests and herb gardens? That's where they work. She glanced at my tattered, muddy clothes and let out an embarrassed little laugh. Right. You might not be from a wealthy family, so you might not know how this works. Let us explain the basics of the Tai Xian sect. I bowed deeply, showing my respect. Thank you, senior sisters. Please, teach me. They started explaining the hierarchy. Most people start as servant disciples. They have to tend to the fields and gardens to earn contribution points. These points are the real currency here. You can trade them at the contribution pavilion for anything, treasures, weapons, or secret cultivation techniques. Once a servant reaches the third level of the Qi refining stage, they become an outer sect disciple. At that point, they choose a specific peak to join. Each peak has a specialty. The Thundercloud Peak focuses on lightning spells. The Spirit Sword Peak is all about sword arts. Then there's the Spirit Beast Peak, which specializes in raising immortal beasts and spirit insects. The sisters were all outer sect disciples. They didn't have to farm anymore. They lived in their own private caves and earned points by completing sect missions. If they ever reached the 6th level of Qi refining, they could test for the inner sect. But that was incredibly hard. Most people stayed in the outer sect even at the 8th or 9th level. Only inner disciples got the best spells and a real shot at the foundation establishment stage, the true path to immortality. When I heard about the Spirit Beast Peak, my eyes lit up. With my bug world and the Bug Emperor's bloodline, that was exactly where I belonged. I was a professional when it came to insects. But the talk of spells and swords made my blood boil with excitement, too. I had seen Taoist Xianling summon lightning to blast those demonic cultists. I wanted that power. I wanted to fly through the sky and take an enemy's head from miles away with a single flick of a sword. The sisters kept chirping away, dumping as much information into my head as possible. Luckily, after eating that pearl from the white bug, my memory was incredible. I memorized every word. The Tai Xian sect was massive, bigger than any city I had ever seen. We flew for another half-hour before the boat finally descended toward a wide landing pad where dozens of other flying ships were parked. The sisters were still talking my ear off when a sharp cough from Taoist Xian Ling cut them short. They giggled, waved goodbye to me, and hopped off the ship, disappearing into the night. I stood there, bowing to the empty air, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. For 13 years, I had only known kindness from my family. Now, I felt like I finally belonged somewhere. The cultivation world was cruel, sure, but it had its warmth too. Soon, only Taoist Xianling, Lin Xiaoxin, and I were left on the deck. Xiaoxin, the Taoist said calmly, "Take him to the servant hall. Let him go through the induction process with the other children." "Yes, master," she replied. Before I could even blink, the Taoist turned into a streak of light and vanished. He was so fast I couldn't even see how he left. I bowed toward the empty sky. He had given me medicine and saved my life. I wouldn't forget that. Lin Xiaoxin still looked miserable over her sister being kidnapped. She didn't feel like talking. She grabbed my arm with her delicate hand, but her grip was like iron. She lifted me up like a helpless chick and leaped onto a small flying sword. We shot through the night. The wind howled in my ears, forcing my eyes shut. As we flew, a sweet, intoxicating scent from her body wrapped around me. My heart raced. I was just a lowly servant. I had only ever smelled such expensive fragrances from a distance when the young mistresses passed by. I had never been this close to a girl before. The sword slowed down. When I opened my eyes, we were hovering over a crowded plaza lit by torches. There were hundreds of kids there, all around 10 to 13 years old. Some wore silk and carried expensive swords, while others wore rags just like mine. These were the recruits from across the great Xin dynasty. Lin Xiaoxin dropped me off at the edge of the crowd. "Wait here, junior brother Yi. A steward will be by shortly." She didn't wait for a thank you. She soared back into the sky and was gone. I moved toward the back of the crowd, where the commoner kids were gathered. The wealthy kids were up front, looking just as arrogant and excited as the ones I had met on the ship. It looked like their journeys had been much smoother than mine, no demon attacks for them. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, the crowd grew to about 700 people. Suddenly, a group of disciples descended from the sky. At their head was an old man with white hair and a kind smile. "Children," he announced, his voice carrying across the plaza. "I am the steward of the servant hall. Line up. Once you pass the test of the demon-revealing mirror, you will receive your identity jade. Today you officially join the Taishan sect." The boys and girls quickly formed long lines. I finally understood why Lin Xiaoxin was here earlier. The children from wealthy families were all gathered at the front of the plaza. They got to go first, passing the test of the demon-revealing mirror before any of us commoners could even get close. I wasn't in a rush, though. I just stepped quietly to the very back of the line. The white-haired steward nodded slightly. A flash of spiritual light erupted from his palm, and a bronze mirror emitting a silver-white glow appeared. With a low hum, the mirror flew up from his hand, facing downward. The steward pointed a finger, shooting a stream of water-blue light into the back of the mirror. Suddenly, the mirror erupted with brilliance. The reflective surface expanded until it was the size of a large wash basin. "Let no demonic shadow or monster energy hide," the steward shouted. The mirror swept forward, gliding just a few inches above the heads of the children at the front of the line. I felt a surge of nervousness. This mirror was designed to detect demonic presence and hidden monsters trying to infiltrate the Taishan sect. I thought about Xiao Chong and Xiao Bai. One could steal the pants off a martial artist, and the other could read and write. They were definitely monsters. I didn't want the mirror to discover the secrets of my bug world, but I was overthinking it. When the mirror finally flew over my head, it didn't pause. It didn't flash or make a sound. I passed the test without any drama. Up ahead, the kids who passed were already registering. They received their identity jade plates, official Taishan sect robes, a spatial bag, a stack of books, and a black iron sword. By the time I reached the steward, the sun was high in the sky. The steward stroked his beard and smiled at me. "You must be the Yi Ling that Xian Ling rescued." Reporting to the steward, "I am Yi Ling," I said respectfully. He nodded and sifted through a pile of jade plates until he found one carved with my name. Taishan sect servant disciple, Yiling. He handed the small token to me. Drip your blood on it to claim ownership. I bit my finger and squeezed a drop of blood onto the jade. It pulsed with a faint light. Suddenly, I felt a strange, spiritual connection to the object. From this moment on, you are officially a disciple of our Taishan sect, the steward announced. Follow the rules, practice hard, and remember your duty to slay demons and protect the righteous path. I bowed deeply. I will follow your teachings, steward. Good boy, he smiled. Go to your senior brothers and sisters to collect your gear. I moved to the first station where a senior disciple was handing out robes. His eyes were incredibly sharp. He didn't need a measuring tape. He just took one look at me and handed over 2 sets of perfectly sized robes. Junior brother, these are your Dharma robes, he explained. They repel insects, keep out dust, and can't be burned by normal fire or soaked by water. However, you need to reach the first level of chi refining to activate these properties. The stronger your cultivation, the stronger the robes become. If you grow out of them, bring them back for a larger size. If you want better armor, you'll need to earn contribution points. I took the robes, my heart racing. These were the most expensive, beautiful clothes I had ever touched in my life. I moved to the next station, where a pretty senior sister was handing out spatial bags. The bag was small, about the size of my palm, embroidered with the sect's name and images of cranes. She seemed friendly, likely because the steward had shown me special attention. Junior brother, drip your blood on this too, she said with a grin. Once you have even a tiny bit of spiritual power, you can use it. Don't lose it, though. A replacement costs 10 spirit stones, which is a lot for a beginner. I squeezed another drop of blood onto the bag. As it soaked in, a mental link formed. I looked inside and saw an empty space about the size of a small dining table. With a single thought, I sent my new robes into the bag. With another thought, they reappeared in my hand. It was incredible. This was real immortal magic. Such a clever junior brother, the sister teased. Next, I moved to the book station. A senior disciple handed me a heavy stack. Read the sect rules carefully. There's a test in 3 months, and you'll be punished if you fail. If you can't read, we have teachers who give daily lessons. These books also include maps of the mountain range, breathing techniques, and basic sword styles. I tucked the books into my spatial bag and moved to the final stop. The senior disciple there handed me a black iron sword in a pale green scabbard. I took it with both hands, trying to stay calm, but I was screaming with excitement inside. This was my first real weapon. Junior brother Yi, the disciple whispered as he handed it over. This sword is just ordinary iron. Use it for practice, but don't try to fight high-level demons with it. You have great talent. Once you reach the first level of chi refining, you'll have the strength of a galloping spirit horse. Then, you can handle real magical treasures. But those cost contribution points, so start looking for ways to serve the sect. I thanked the senior brother for the warning. I had already learned a lot from the senior sisters buzzing around me earlier. In the cultivation world, power wasn't a mystery. It was measured in specific units. The standard unit for a low-level cultivator was the red spirit hunting horse. These beasts were covered in red scales, could run 1,000 miles a day, and were far stronger than any mortal horse. Having one horse of power meant your spiritual energy was strong enough to win a tug-of-war against one of those beasts. A foundation establishment cultivator possessed dozens of horses of power. They could lift massive boulders and flatten houses like they were drinking water. I heard Golden Core Masters had hundreds of horses of power. They could level city walls and crush entire armies alone. When they fought, mountains crumbled and the earth split. I always knew immortals were powerful, but now I had a concrete idea of just how terrifying they were. It made sense why empires with billions of people bowed to these sects. Even an emperor had to show respect to a common disciple. A senior brother led me toward the servant disciple dorms. Men and women lived in separate areas. Along the way, he explained more of the rules. Even though I had joined, I was only a preparatory servant. I didn't even have the strength of one horse yet, which meant I wasn't even qualified to do the sect's chores. I had exactly 1 year to reach the first level of chi refining. If I failed to gain that one horse of power by then, I'd be stripped of my status and sent back to the mortal world. Most of the wandering cultivators in the mortal world were people who had failed this test. They were sent back in disgrace, but they still lived lives of luxury among mortals. That wasn't enough for me. I didn't just want to be rich or powerful. Even the most powerful emperor was just a high-level slave to the Taishan sect. I wanted immortality. I wanted to be truly free. I wanted a life where no one could ever look down on me again. There was no salary for preparatory servants. We had to earn our way to becoming official servants before we could get the 2 spirit stones a month. For now, we were just here to learn. The sect treated us accordingly. No matter if you were a prince or a peasant in your old life, everyone got the same tiny room. It was about 10 feet wide. Inside was a bed, a silk quilt, a prayer mat, a small table, and a cabinet. As soon as the senior brother left, I shut the door and locked it. I let out a long, shaky breath. I pumped my fists in the air, a wild, crazy smile spreading across my face. I didn't dare laugh out loud, but I swung my fists through the air until they whistled. I had done it. I was officially part of an immortal sect. My room actually had a window. I suspected the senior brother gave it to me because I was the sole survivor of the Blood Shadow cult massacre. People were talking about it. I was famous for all the wrong reasons. I opened the window and looked out. Below me was a sea of clouds clinging to the mountainside. I could see ancient, beautiful buildings and a massive plaza where senior disciples practiced their sword forms. I turned back and ran my hand over the silk blankets. They were so soft it made my soul shiver. I grew up as a slave wearing rags. Silk was for the rich and powerful. Now, I was diving into a bed that smelled like fresh flowers. I checked the furniture too. It was all made of heavy, solid wood that didn't have a single scratch on it. The quality was better than anything I had ever seen. The dorm building was a massive 10-story tower made of stone and timber. In the mortal world, a building this tall was impossible. Here, it was just a basic hut for servants. I lived on the 6th floor. Across from my balcony was another tower where the female disciples lived. I could see them peeking out of their windows, just as curious as I was. I heard that once I became an official servant, I'd get my own house and courtyard. The sect was massive, bigger than cities with millions of people, so there was plenty of land. I stood by my door, looking out at the hallway and dreaming of my future. Suddenly, the door to my left opened. A plump boy about 13 years old stepped out. He was dressed in expensive silks and had small, shifty eyes. He stopped and looked straight at me. The boy gave me a small, friendly bow and smiled. He introduced himself as Wang Chongxing. He told me his family did a bit of business and said we were neighbors now, so we should look out for each other. Just as he finished speaking, the door to my right swung open. A handsome boy around 11 or 12 stepped out. He wore a luxurious golden robe and had a cold, arrogant look in his eyes. He gave a quick, formal salute and said his name was Song Lingtian. He mentioned his family was involved in managing government affairs. I was stunned. Both of these boys clearly came from wealth and power. I bowed back, trying to keep my composure. I told them my name was Yilin and admitted that my ancestors had been servants for generations. I didn't try to hide my past. There was no point. I was still wearing my tattered rags, and one of my butt cheeks was practically peeking through a hole in my pants. No one would believe I was a young master. Besides, in my mind, we were all Taishan sect disciples now. In the face of immortality, mortal status shouldn't matter. If they looked down on me for being a slave, I just wouldn't talk to them. To my surprise, Wang Chongxing and Song Lingtian both froze when I finished my introduction. They stared at me intensely. There was no mockery or disdain on their faces. Instead, they looked shocked. What I didn't realize was that the senior brother in charge of housing had placed me in the elite wing reserved for the most powerful noble families. For a lowly servant to be assigned here, they assumed I must have incredible secret connections within the sect. Wang Chongxing seemed to know Song Lingtian already. He let out a loud, hearty laugh and announced that he would host a lunch for the 3 of us today. He wanted us to get to know each other so we could have each other's backs. I hesitated, confused about how we'd get a private lunch. Wang Chongxing laughed again, sensing my confusion. He told me that the sect wasn't just about communal dining halls. If you had money, or more accurately, spirit stones, you could eat like a king at the sect's restaurants. He flicked his wrist, and a translucent, oval stone appeared in his palm. It was the size of a fist and glowed with a faint blue light. I felt a surge of pure spiritual energy radiating from it. Just standing near it made my breathing feel clearer and my energy flow faster. This was a spirit stone, the currency of the immortal world. The senior sisters on the flying boat had told me that while spirit stones weren't everything, you couldn't move an inch without them. A regular servant only earned 2 stones a month, which showed just how precious they were. A single stone was worth more than my black iron sword, yet Wang Changsheng was tossing one around like it was a pebble. His little family business was clearly a massive empire. Part of me felt a pang of regret. I wanted to tell him that if he wanted to be friends, he should just give me the stone so I could use it for cultivation. But I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to look like a clueless beggar. Song Lingtian agreed to the lunch with a simple nod and retreated back into his room. As the door closed, it clicked in my head. Managing government affairs meant his family was royalty. Song Lingtian was likely a prince of the great Xian dynasty. Wang Changsheng gave me a wink, told me he'd see me at noon, and headed back inside. I hurried into my own room and locked the door tight. I checked the windows to make sure no one was watching. I wasn't sure if any high-level cultivators were nearby, so I had to be careful. My rise to success was all thanks to my insect companions, Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong, and I desperately wanted to share the news with them. However, I knew that if their demonic aura was detected, I'd be executed. I touched the ancient jade ring on my finger, the bug world. I whispered to the ring, telling them I was sorry I couldn't let them out yet. To my shock, a soft, feminine voice echoed in my mind. It was Xiao Bai. She congratulated me on becoming an immortal master in a shy, stuttering tone. She told me not to worry about them. In the bug world, they could enter a deep sleep where they didn't need to eat for 100 years. Then, I heard a series of excited chirps and clicks. That was Xiao Chong. He was clearly thrilled. I realized I could communicate with them through my thoughts using the ring. I thanked Xiao Chong for saving me from the blood shadow cultist back in the forest. If he hadn't cracked that guy's skull, I would have been a human sacrifice. Xiao Chong chirped back aggressively, sounding like he was ready for the next fight. I told him he needed to practice speaking like Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai told me she was worried about my safety, which warmed my heart. I promised them that once I learned the rules of the sect and found a safe way to hide their presence, I would let them out. Xiao Bai then shared some incredible news. While they slept in the bug world, they could wander through dream realms to learn secret techniques. She believed she would soon master a hidden breath technique that would mask their demonic aura completely. My eyes lit up. The bug world was even more powerful than I thought. It allowed them to cultivate and grow stronger while hidden away. I told them to keep working hard. My goal was to join the Spirit Beast Peak. Once I was there, I could officially raise them as my pets without anyone batting an eye. I spent the next hour chatting with my silent partners, feeling for the first time like I wasn't alone in this dangerous new world. I let Xiao Chong and Xiao Bai drift back into their deep sleep, leaving them to focus on mastering their hidden techniques. I couldn't afford to distract them. Sitting alone in my new dormitory, I picked up a simple ceramic teacup. With a single thought, the cup vanished from my hand. I closed my eyes and focused on the bug world. There it was, sitting right in the middle of the desert near my sleeping companions. It worked exactly like a spatial bag, but the difference was staggering. The bags given to us by the Taishan sect were tiny, barely enough to fit a small desk. This desert space was 100 meters wide. I basically had a storage space thousands of times larger than any normal disciple. I experimented a bit more. I realized that moving items in and out consumed a small amount of my spiritual energy, and I had to be physically touching the object. If something was too heavy or too large, I might run out of mana before I could store it. That was basic knowledge for any cultivator using a spatial bag. With a flash of light, the teacup reappeared in my palm. It was effortless. I frowned, thinking back to how much energy it took to bring Xiao Chong out earlier. The beetle wasn't much bigger than this cup, yet the drain on my mind had been massive. Why was it so different? I realized then that the heavy yellow ring wasn't just a common treasure. It was something legendary, the kind of object that could get me killed if anyone ever found out. I vowed once again to keep this secret buried deep. I grabbed a large wooden bucket and headed to the communal washrooms. Rows of water vats lined the walls for the disciples to use. I filled my bucket, ducked into a private stall, and scrubbed the grime of the journey from my skin and hair. Once I was dry, I pulled out the light blue Taoist robes the sect had provided. The senior brother who handed them out said these were Dharma clothes, impervious to common fire, water, and dust. I wasn't strong enough to activate their magical properties yet, but they felt incredible. I stood before an old bronze mirror and adjusted the collar. They say clothes make the man, and it was true. Back at the Lin household, even in my tattered rags, the senior maidservants used to compliment my looks. But now, the transformation was complete. The lowly servant was gone. In his place stood a young man with steady eyes and a firm posture. Thanks to the pearl Xiao I had given me, my skin was flawless and full of health. I smiled at my reflection, tossed my old servant clothes into the trash, and walked out with my head held high. On my way back to the room, several other disciples cupped their hands in greeting. I smiled and returned the gesture. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. Back in my room, I sat down with a stack of books given to all new recruits. I had spent 3 months teaching myself to read and eavesdropping on the Lin family's private tutors. I wasn't as educated as the children from noble families, but I could understand most of the text. I skipped the introductions and went straight to the sect rules. My blood ran cold when I found the section on unregistered spirits and monsters. The punishment for keeping demonic creatures without reporting them was severe: 6 months of solitary confinement at best, or having your cultivation destroyed and being expelled at worst. The book explained that these rules applied to anyone below the foundation establishment stage. Once you reached that level, the restrictions loosened. It wasn't that the sect hated spirit beasts, many elders used them, but they had to be registered and inspected. There were strict laws. You couldn't let your beasts show their ferocity to mortals, and you absolutely couldn't feed them living creatures. If a beast tasted human flesh, the owner was executed as a demonic cultivator. The book listed horror stories of what happened when things went wrong. One disciple raised a sky demon that eventually possessed him. Another had a flying tiger that broke loose and slaughtered 10 servants in a single night. There was even a story about a disciple seduced and drained of his life force by his own succubus pet. The rules were harsh, but they made sense. A sect with tens of thousands of people, ruling over a kingdom of billions, couldn't survive without order. It also proved my theory. Power was the only way to bypass the system. The rules explicitly stated they didn't apply to Foundation establishment cultivators. I felt a wave of relief that I hadn't tried to show off Xiao Chong or Xiao Bai. If I had, they would have been slaughtered, and I would have been finished. My goal was clear now. I needed to reach a higher rank and get them official identities. Once they were registered, they would be protected by the sect's laws instead of being hunted by them. I spent the rest of the night reading through the case studies, soaking up every bit of knowledge I could. Every rule told a story, and I intended to learn from every mistake those before me had made. I felt like this book should have been renamed 108 Ways to Die as a Tai Xian disciple. I spent over an hour just memorizing the sect rules. Then I spent another 30 minutes skimming through the rest of the pile. The most important one was the Sun Long mountain range records. It was a massive encyclopedia of the cultivation world. Maps, demons, rare herbs, and ancient legends filled the pages. I realized the Tai Xian sect wasn't the only player in the game. We were actually ranked 3rd among the righteous sects. The Taiji sect was the strongest, ruling over 30 billion people. The Taitsong sect was 2nd, controlling 20 billion. My sect was the oldest, standing for 5,000 years. But we had been crippled during the last great war between immortals and demons. We were still powerful, like a dying camel that's still bigger than a horse, but we were fading. The book didn't try to hide our decline. It was brutally honest. The elders wanted us to feel that shame, so we would fight to restore our glory. Outside of the big 3, there were only small rogue sects. They lived in the shadows, fighting over our leftovers and the students we rejected. They were desperate, surviving in the cracks between the giants. I moved on to the breathing and medicine formula. I thought I had mastered breathing, but this book had a secret mental mantra. It allowed for much faster energy absorption. I wanted to try it immediately, but my stomach wouldn't let me. I hadn't eaten all day, and I was starving. The other books covered basic spells and body refinement. The Taishan sword art was divided into 3 realms: mortal, spirit, and heaven. The senior brother who assigned my room had told me I needed to be a jack of all trades. In a real fight, a single weakness could get me killed. I was like a dry sponge, soaking up every word on the pages. I completely lost track of time. Then, a loud knock echoed through the room. "Brother Yi Lin, are you home? Time for the feast." It was Wang Chongxing. I stood up too fast, and the world started spinning. My stomach felt like it was touching my spine. I wished I could send Xiao Chong out to find a snack, but this place was crawling with experts. If they caught my bug, they'd kill it. I circulated a bit of spiritual energy to clear my head and opened the door. Wang Chongxing and Song Lingtian were waiting for me. They both wore their new Taoist robes. Even with his round face and small eyes, Wang looked like a dignified immortal. Song Lingtian, however, looked like a cold-blooded killer of hearts. He was effortlessly handsome, like a celestial being who had fallen to earth. "Sorry," I said, feeling a bit embarrassed. "I got lost in the books." Wang laughed it off. He had been busy memorizing the rules too, terrified of breaking one by accident. Song Lingtian just stood there, looking perfect. He had already memorized the rules back in the mortal world. We headed down the stairs together. The hallways were packed with disciples in identical robes. Everyone was heading to the dining hall. Outside, the sun was scorching, but the training grounds were still full. People were practicing their forms and spells, ignoring the heat and the hunger. It was a shock to my system. I thought I was the hardest worker here because I practiced my breathing constantly. I was wrong. There were hundreds of people even more obsessed than me. "Cultivation is a race against time," Song Lingtian said coldly. He told us that effort was cheap and that most people would never reach the top, no matter how hard they tried. To him, talent was the only thing that mattered. Wang Chongxing just grinned. He quoted his father, saying that sometimes you have to enjoy life to find a breakthrough. To him, cultivation was just another kind of business. "You can't be too stubborn about these things," Wang Chongxing said, nudging me with his elbow and winking. "Tell me, Brother Yi, you're still a virgin, aren't you? Give it some time. I'll introduce you to some beautiful senior sisters. I promise they'll be stunning." He wore a look that said, "You know what I mean." I coughed into my hand, feeling the heat rise to my face. "I'm still young," I muttered. "Maybe another time." Wang Chongxing didn't push it. Instead, he pulled out 2 maps of the Taishan sect and handed one to me. I opened it and quickly found our destination, the Gathering Essence Pavilion. We followed a shaded path for a while until a grand restaurant appeared. The entrance was decorated with statues of various exotic ingredients, looking very high-end. Inside, the decor was elegant and refined. I was shocked to see men and women wearing Taishan sect robes acting as waiters. Before I could process that, the manager, a middle-aged man, approached us, flanked by a row of slender, beautiful maids. They all bowed deeply as soon as Wang Chongxing stepped inside. "Young master, you've finally arrived," the manager said respectfully. "The Yakian suite is ready." Wang Chongxing waved him off. "No need for formalities. I'm hosting 2 VIPs today. Bring out all the signature dishes. Skip the immortal wine, though. We just joined the sect and have too much to do. Drinking will mess things up." "Understood," the manager replied. I stood there stunned. The Gathering Essence Pavilion was actually owned by Wang Chongxing's family. They had managed to bring their business right into the heart of the Taishan sect. Song Lingtian remained calm, acting as if he already knew. We were led into a luxurious private room. The maid stood by, waiting for orders. Wang Chongxing looked proud. "If you ever eat here, just give them my name. You'll get 50% off." I looked at the gold-leafed walls and silk curtains. Even with a 90% discount, I probably couldn't afford a glass of water here. Wang Chongxing flopped into a plush rocking chair. The maids immediately moved in, their hands soft as they massaged his legs. My heart skipped a beat when I felt the energy coming off them. These maids had spiritual fluctuations in their bodies. Back in the mortal world, they would be honored as immortals. Here, they were just servants, smiling brightly and hoping to catch a rich disciple's eye. Wang Chongxing glanced at us, and 2 more maids approached Song Lingtian and me, their hands reaching out to massage our shoulders. Song Lingtian shut them down with a single, icy glare. "No thanks," he said coldly. No, I'm fine. I added quickly. I wasn't used to this kind of luxury. It felt wrong. Wang Changxing chuckled. Enjoy it while you can. There's no rule against it. Why do we seek immortality and learn spells? Isn't it so we can enjoy life? Once I reach the nascent soul stage, I'm going to hire a bunch of peerless golden core beauties to serve me. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the words. Was the goal of cultivation really just to enjoy yourself? I wanted power too, but my version was different. I wanted enough strength so that no one could ever look down on me again. I wanted a quiet life with a woman I loved, ensuring my children would never be born as slaves. Wang Changxing made me realize something important. Having a background in the mortal world wasn't useless like the seniors said. If your family was powerful enough, you could still call the shots inside the sect. Even respected immortals would bow their heads for money. The cultivation world wasn't some pure, transcendent paradise. It was just like the mortal world, only with higher stakes. Soon, the food arrived. The table was covered in roasted chickens, massive beef legs, and organs from animals I didn't even recognize. Everything smelled incredible. Eat up, brother Yi, Wang Changxing said, gesturing to the spread. This is all spirit beast meat or poultry raised on spiritual herbs. It'll make you stronger and boost your cultivation. Don't be shy. We're family. He grabbed a whole roasted chicken and started tearing into it like a wild animal. I didn't hold back either. I grabbed a massive beef leg and started devouring it. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. If the bone hadn't been so hard, I probably would have swallowed that too. Wang Changxing and I ate like barbarians, while Song Lingtian remained elegant. Strangely, even with his refined manners, he finished faster than both of us. We cleared the table in record time. As I sat back, a warm sensation spread through my stomach. Strands of spiritual energy flowed through my meridians and gathered in my dantian. I could literally feel my cultivation rising as I digested the meal. After lunch, we walked along the shaded path to help our digestion. Wang Changxing was in high spirits, throwing a few practice punches as he walked. Don't let his fat fool you. His movements were fierce. His body moved like a snake, and his punches broke the air with a sharp crack. I watched him, my heart racing. If one of those hits landed on me, my bones would shatter. He was much stronger than me, already on the verge of reaching the first level of qi refining. After finishing his set, Wang Changxing looked at Song Lingtian with a challenge in his eyes. Prince 13, care for a few rounds? A golden light flashed in Song Lingtian's eyes. Your crushing stone punch isn't bad, Fatty Wang. Your footwork is solid too. But it's not as strong as my tiger roar punch. We'll see about that. Wang Changxing didn't wait for an answer. His round body lunged forward like a hungry wolf. Song Lingtian was ready. He blurred into a shadow to meet the attack. I heard a sound like a tiger's roar as his fist tore through the air. Then came a loud bang. Their fists collided, sending a shockwave that flattened the grass and sent dead leaves flying. Both of them had poured spiritual power into that hit. Song Lingtian was also incredibly close to the first level of qi refining. The force of the impact sent them both stumbling back. Song Lingtian took 3 steps to steady himself. Wang Changxing took 5. Blood dripped from their knuckles. I thought things were about to get ugly, but then Wang Changxing burst out laughing. Not bad. Prince 13 had only awakened his spirit root 2 months ago, yet he was already on the verge of reaching the first level of qi refining. I guessed he must possess a high-grade spirit root. Song Lingtian didn't deny it, nor did he confirm it. He just looked at Wang Changxing with a calm expression. He told the fatty that he wasn't bad either, considering he spent his days eating and playing yet hadn't fallen behind. He suspected Wang Changxing also had a high-grade spirit root. Wang Changxing laughed and conceded. He admitted the prince was slightly stronger and declared that from now on, he'd follow his lead. The two of them shared a knowing smile. I stood there, watching them, feeling a bit deflated. I had been feeling pretty good about myself lately. My background couldn't compare to theirs, but I thought my talent was decent. Now I realized how far behind I actually was. I only lived next to these two because of a stroke of luck. The senior brother who assigned the rooms probably felt sorry for me because I was almost kidnapped by demonic cultivators before even joining the sect. He had set me up here so I could make powerful friends. My 5-element medium-grade spirit root was rare, the best of its kind, but it still paled next to a high-grade one. Song Lingtian turned his gaze toward me. He looked curious. He said that a match between just the two of them couldn't decide who the boss was. He asked if I wanted to go a few rounds. I waved my hands frantically, giving him an awkward smile. I told him he was the boss, Wang Changxing was second, and I'd happily be third. There was no point in fighting. I told them I'd rather learn from them in the future. The truth was, I only had raw strength. I didn't know any techniques or footwork, and my spiritual power was nowhere near theirs. Fighting Song Lingtian now would just be embarrassing myself. Besides, I had no interest in being the leader. I really did want their advice. These kids from top-tier families knew way more than I did. Song Lingtian agreed that we should help each other. Wang Changxing suggested we give our little group a name. Since we were all cultivators seeking immortality, Song Lingtian called it the Longevity Society. We decided to meet once a month, on the night of the full moon, at Wang Changxing's pavilion. The fatty beamed, loving the idea that his name might live on forever through us. Just like that, our little cultivation circle was born, and I somehow became a founding member. As we walked back to the dorms, Wang Changxing explained why cultivators stick together. In a group without conflicting interests, you can share information and help each other solve problems. You can trade resources without worrying about being cheated. The road to immortality is long. You need talent and comprehension, but you also need resources, connections, money, and information. Only the legendary geniuses with supreme spirit roots could afford to be loners. We weren't them. I didn't mind joining. This wasn't some brothers for life pact. It was a partnership based on mutual benefit. Back in my room, I picked up the Tai Xin sect rulebook. I had to memorize it. Rule 1. Disciples must not kill each other. Penalty, execution. Rule 2. No consorting with demonic sections. Penalty, execution. Rule 3. No bullying mortals using cultivation. Time flew by as I buried myself in study and practice. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. I didn't relax for a single second. I memorized the rules, learned the breathing techniques, and read everything I could about the Sun Dragon Mountains and basic spells. I mastered the techniques in the Tai Xin body refining art, including the crushing stone punch and the gale footwork. I even got a handle on the Tai Xin sword style. Thanks to the feasts Wang Changxing treated me to and the nutritious food in the sect cafeteria, I hit a growth spurt. In just a month, I looked like a 16-year-old boy. I still had a youthful face, but I looked sharp and heroic, my temperament starting to match Song Lingtian's. One morning, while the mist still clung to the mountains, the sound of clashing steel rang out across the training grounds. Sparks flew as my black iron sword met Song Lingtian's. We moved like ghosts through the fog, fast and blurred. Wang Changxing watched from the sidelines, rubbing his chin. He looked annoyed. He muttered about how fast I was growing. 3 months ago, I had never even touched a sword, yet here I was, trading blows with Song Lingtian. I was still losing, but I wasn't going down easily anymore. My spiritual power was also nearing the first level of chi refining. He started to worry that if he didn't work harder, he'd end up being the third brother of the group. The real reason for my explosive growth was the pearl shao I had fed me. Its medicinal power was still in my body, being absorbed into my cultivation every time I practiced. I still didn't know what that treasure was. I couldn't find anything like it in my books. After half an hour, the mist cleared and more disciples arrived. Song Lingtian and I sheathed our swords at the same time. I bowed to him in thanks. His swordplay was getting even more lethal. I told him he'd likely reach the spirit profound realm soon, the stage where a sword can channel the world's spiritual energy to double its power. Song Lingtian had officially reached the first level of chi refining a month ago. He had been promoted to an inner disciple of the Spirit Sword Peak, skipping the handyman stage entirely. He was already famous in the sect. I used to call him Brother Song, but now I had to call him Senior Brother. Still, he came by every few days to spar with me. My progress was largely thanks to his guidance. He looked perfectly calm, not a hair out of place. I, on the other hand, was drenched in sweat and gasping for air. My body had reached its limit. Song Lingtian tossed his sword to me and beckoned Wang Changxing over. The fatty lunged forward, and the sound of heavy punches filled the air. This was our routine. As the leader, Song Lingtian looked after us both. What was truly terrifying was that his fist techniques were just as incredible as his sword skills. Wang Changsheng had also reached the first level of qi refining about half a month ago. Even so, he was still no match for Song Lingtian when it came to fist techniques. Wang Changsheng had joined Thundercloud Peak as an outer disciple. Because he possessed a high-grade spirit root, he also skipped the handyman stage. His real talent lay in spells, not close-quarters combat. On the training grounds, Song Lingtian's Tiger Roar fist forced Wang Changsheng back step after step. "Take this, Palm Thunder," Wang Changsheng shouted. Suddenly, arcs of electricity crackled across his body. The lightning gathered in his palm, and he thrust it forward towards Song Lingtian. A loud boom echoed as a snake of lightning shot out. It looked terrifying, but Song Lingtian didn't even blink. He simply tilted his body to the side. The lightning hissed past his shoulder and struck the ground, vanishing instantly. Before Wang Changsheng could react, Song Lingtian's fist sent him flying 10 feet back. The Palm Thunder was a yellow tier spell, and while it looked impressive, Wang Changsheng's aim was terrible. He scrambled up from the dirt, face pale and covered in dust. That one spell had drained his entire reserve of spiritual power. I'm done," Wang Changsheng gasped, huffing for air. "Senior Brother Song is just too strong. No wonder they call you the top genius of the Taishan sect this year. Truly terrifying." By then, I had caught my breath. The three of us headed toward the giant ape pavilion for breakfast. "You made a classic mistake with that spell," Song Lingtian said calmly. "Magic attacks must be unexpected. Your Palm Thunder charges slowly, and then you shouted a warning. Even Yilin could have dodged that." Wang Changsheng gave a sheepish laugh. "I was just worried the spell would be too powerful. If I actually hit you, I couldn't afford the medical bills." "You're too confident in your spells," Song Lingtian replied coldly. "Besides, minor injuries during a spar don't break sect rules." He turned to me. "Regarding your promotion to a high-level handyman at Spirit Beast Peak, I've looked into it." Song Lingtian and Wang Changsheng were only where they were because of their high-grade spirit roots. It would be a waste to make them do manual labor for years. I only had a mid-grade 5-element root, so I couldn't skip the handyman stage. In the Taishan sect, there were two types of handymen. Ordinary ones worked the fields on the outskirts, growing spiritual grain and herbs. High-level handymen were assigned to specific peaks to handle more specialized tasks, like smelting or feeding low-level spirit beasts. My plan was to become a high-level handyman at Spirit Beast Peak. I needed a way to give Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong legal identities within the sect. More importantly, I was a bug imperial body. My insects were my real strength. My own power was just a support. While Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong could now shrink their size and hide their auras, I couldn't keep them hidden forever. "Many people want those high-level spots," Song Lingtian continued. "Spirit Beast Peak tests your patience, willpower, and spirituality." He explained that spirituality was the innate ability to communicate with beasts and insects. Some people were born with it, but most cultivators lacked it entirely. My eyes lit up. "Thanks for the info, senior brother. Are you about to break through to the first level of qi refining?" Wang Changsheng asked, looking surprised. I nodded. "I feel like it'll happen in the next few days. In the cultivation world, you aren't a real cultivator until you hit that first level." Wang Changsheng stared at me. "I'm starting to think you actually have a high-grade spirit root. Your speed is insane." I laughed it off. "If I had a high-grade root, I wouldn't be aiming for a handyman job. I told you, I swallowed that glowing pearl back in the mortal world. I'm still feeling the effects of whatever treasure that was." Song Lingtian looked almost envious. "Brother Yi, my father has treasures like that in the Imperial Vault, but they're guarded by armies. He gives them all to the foundation-building cultivators as tribute. I wasn't even allowed to smell them, let alone eat one." Wang Changsheng sighed. "Treasures that gather the essence of the sun and moon can't be bought with money. You usually have to kill a powerful demon beast just to get near one. You must have found one that died of old age. Your luck is truly explosive." I let them believe the story. It was the perfect cover for my rapid progress. While my spirit root was average, I was discovering new uses for my bug world. I realized I could actually farm in that desert space. If I used my spiritual sense, I could grow plants at several times the normal speed. I just needed seeds. To prepare for my experiments, I had even borrowed 3 spirit stones from Wang Changsheng, claiming I needed them for my cultivation. We reached a private room in the pavilion and started exchanging news. Mostly, I just listened. I didn't have any secrets worth sharing yet. Yesterday, a patrol at the Dragon Mountain catacombs was ambushed, Song Lingtian said, his voice dropping. The Demon Sand sect teamed up with the Earth Demons. The Foundation building leader was killed, and all 50 Qi refining disciples were slaughtered. It was a bloodbath. 10 of our own inner disciples were among the dead. The room went quiet. It's not just there, Song Lingtian continued. Demonic cults are causing chaos across the Great Xin dynasty. Thousands of civilians are being killed or kidnapped every day. The human demons and earth demons have officially joined forces. This has never happened before. The sect leaders are scrambling for a strategy. I think, in the near future, the war between the immortals and demons in the Dragon Mountain range was about to reignite. As Song Lingtian finished speaking, Wang Changxing's face turned pale. He let out a string of curses, looking genuinely shaken. He muttered about how unlucky we were. A war of this scale usually only happened once every 500 years, and it just had to land right when we started our cultivation journey. If a full-scale war broke out, disciples like us would be nothing but cannonball fodder. Our lives wouldn't even make a ripple in a conflict that massive. If billions of earth demons surged out from the catacombs, the entire Dragon Mountain cultivation world would be scorched to the ground. The mortal realm would turn into a living hell. By now, I understood the 3 types of demons. First, there were the human demons, cultivators who chose the path of slaughter and greed, doing anything to achieve longevity. Then there were the earth demons, the Shura race from deep underground. They were natural destroyers who viewed humans as livestock to be devoured. Finally, there were the sky demons from the outer void. They were formless spirits that fed on negative emotions and possessed human bodies. They were endless, and while rare, they were the most dangerous. A sky demon invasion meant total silence. Every living thing would be possessed or killed. The earth demons were the second biggest threat. The world beneath our feet was as vast as the one above. Their numbers were trillions. If the human cultivators lost control of the cave entrances, the surface would become a feeding ground. They were brutal, bloodthirsty, and incredibly strong. Ironically, the human demons were the least of the 3 evils. They still needed mortals to maintain their sects and lineages. They even built their own nations, called demon kingdoms. Historically, human demons stood against the earth and sky demons just like we did. But now, the human demons of the Dragon Mountain had actually allied with the earth demons. For the righteous sects, this was a nightmare. I have some news you might not know yet, Wang Changxing said, leaning in. To deal with this, the 3 great righteous sects are planning to change their rules. They want to increase competition and pour more resources into training. I heard from my father that some elders suggested making disciple infighting legal. They want us to kill each other to weed out the weak. The room felt cold. He added that the proposal was radical, so they might not go all the way, but they would likely stop punishing disciples for hurting their peers. The days of a comfortable, peaceful life were ending. I felt a chill. Song Lingtian looked thoughtful. In the 2 months I'd been at the Taishan sect, I hadn't seen a single life or death struggle. The rules were strict, and everyone lived in a bubble of safety. If there was a conflict, the law enforcement team arbitrated it based on morality and reason. But if the rules changed, it would become the law of the jungle. Only the strong would be right. Regardless of the rules, we need to get stronger, Song Lingtian said flatly. We're all going to face the demons soon. Like the fat man said, the weak are just fodder. The strong might actually survive and achieve something. After the gathering at the Great Ape Pavilion, we parted ways. I watched with envy as Song Lingtian stepped onto his flying sword and soared into the clouds. Even Wang Changsheng, though he looked a bit shaky and stayed close to the ground, managed to fly away on his own sword. Flying was the hallmark of a true immortal. I wanted that more than anything. Once I reached the first level of Qi refining, I would have enough spiritual power to command a sword and carry my own weight through the sky. At that level, a cultivator could even hover without a sword, though it was slow and drained energy too fast to be practical. Still, It was enough to keep you from falling to your death. Currently, Song Lingtian lived at Lingjian Peak, already famous for his talent. Wang Changsheng was at Leiyun Peak, backed by his family's endless supply of spirit stones. Then there was me. I was still living in the servant quarters, a medium-grade spirit root disciple with no backing. The only reason I was even in their circle was because they sensed something mysterious about me. I knew that if I were just a regular disciple, they wouldn't have given me the time of day. I walked back alone along the quiet paths of the sect. I saw senior disciples practicing their forms and new recruits laughing together. It was peaceful, but I knew it was a fragile peace built on rules that were about to break. Once the rules changed, this place would become a bloody arena. If the sect didn't change, we would be flowers in a greenhouse, crushed the moment the demons arrived. I clenched my fists. Song Lingtian and Wang Changsheng were friends, but they couldn't protect me forever. I had to stand on my own. I refused to be fodder in the coming war. In the mortal world, I refused to be a slave. In the cultivation world, I refused to be a victim. The desire to grow strong burned in me like never before. When I finally reached my room and closed the door, a small snake with white scales slithered out from my left sleeve. From my right, a pitch-black, mutated cockroach with massive pincers crawled out. My hidden army was growing. Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong were currently using a shrinking technique. To keep me safe, they usually stayed hidden in the folds of my clothes, ready to strike at any moment. They had learned these secret arts from the ancient ring of the Bug Emperor. Unless a Foundation establishment expert came close, a regular chi refining cultivator wouldn't notice a single thing wrong. I watched as Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong returned to their normal sizes. I reached out and stroked Xiao Bai's python head, then gave Xiao Chong's smooth, hard shell a gentle pat. "We're going to face a lot of challenges soon," I whispered to them. "One wrong step and we could die. We have to work together to survive." Xiao Bai hissed softly, her voice echoing in my mind. "We will survive. We will protect you, Master. We won't let anyone hurt you." Xiao Chong let out a series of chirps, clicking his pincers in aggressive agreement. I shook my head. "That won't do. It's not just about me staying alive. I won't let anything happen to you two either. You're my family." I pulled out my sharp black iron sword and made 2 small cuts on my fingers. Blood welled up instantly. Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong moved in to drink. I watched them, feeling a strange connection. "Eat up," I told them. "Eat until you're full." Xiao Bai drank greedily, her voice muffled. "Master, as your cultivation grows, your blood gets more nutritious. We want to drink more, but if we have too much, our bodies might explode." A moment later, Xiao Chong finished his share. He stood up on his back legs like a tiny warrior and drummed his pincers against his round belly, showing me he couldn't take another drop. Xiao Bai licked my wounds with her forked tongue, and I watched in awe as the cuts healed instantly. Within seconds, there wasn't even a scar. Lately, I hadn't added any new bugs to my collection. I was too busy, and I didn't have access to higher-level spirit insects yet. All I saw around the servant quarters were ants and butterflies. I'd thought about raising ants before. They were incredibly disciplined and could carry things many times their own weight. They fought to the death without ever retreating. But I decided to wait until I visited Spirit Beast Peak. If I couldn't find anything special there, I'd just pick a few lucky ants to join us. I sent Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong back into the space of the bug world. It was the best place for them to meditate on secret techniques and grow stronger. By my estimate, Xiao Chong was now as strong as a 5th-level chi refining beast, while Xiao Bai was at the 6th level. Xiao Chong was a master of close combat, fast and incredibly strong. Xiao Bai, on the other hand, was becoming a specialist in low-level spells. And then there was me, their master. I hadn't even reached the 1st level of chi refining yet. Yesterday, I had felt the bottleneck, but I couldn't break through no matter how hard I tried. But today was different. After eating that massive spiritual feast with Wang Changsheng, my body was overflowing with energy. This was my best chance. I sat cross-legged on my bed and closed my eyes. I began to circulate my cultivation technique. Strands of spiritual energy were pulled into my body, flowing through my meridians before gathering in my dantian. The energy began to compress, turning into true essence. 1 hour passed, 10 hours, 1 day, 2 days. On the morning of the 3rd day, my body suddenly jolted. A powerful aura exploded outward from me, making the chairs and tables in the room groan and creak. I opened my eyes, and a sharp light flashed through them. I felt it. The strength of one hunting horse. I had reached the first level. I stayed in my seated position, but my body began to slowly lift off the ground. I was floating. This was the ability of the first level, Leaping Void. Even the strongest mortal couldn't lift themselves up by their own hair, but by wrapping my body in essence, I could defy gravity. This was the fundamental difference between a mortal and a cultivator. While hovering, I reached out my hand toward a teacup on the table. It trembled, rose into the air, and wobbled its way into my palm without spilling a single drop. This was telekinesis. It only worked on inanimate objects or things that didn't fight back, but it felt incredible. I downed the water in one gulp. I hadn't eaten or drank for days, and the thirst was real. Then, I pointed my other hand at my black iron sword. With a sharp clang, the blade unsheathed itself and flew into my hand. It wasn't true sword kiting yet. I need a proper spirit tool for that, but it was a start. I closed my eyes to look inside my dantian. The scattered clouds of essence had gathered into a swirling vortex. As I breathed, the cyclone spun, refining the energy at its center. I knew that to reach foundation establishment, I'd have to turn this gas into liquid. To reach the golden core stage, that liquid would have to crystallize. I was satisfied with my progress, but one thing felt off. Using Leaping Void felt easy. The rumors said it was supposed to be exhausting for beginners, but my essence consumption was barely noticeable. Did I have more than one horse of power? I waved my hand, summoning Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong back into the room. Congratulations, Master. Xiao Bai hissed happily. Xiao Chong chirped along. They knew that the stronger I got, the better my blood would taste. Xiao Bai, help me test something, I said, standing up. I pulled a thick rope from my storage space. I need to know exactly how much power I have. Xiao Bai bit down on one end of the rope, and I grabbed the other. We started a tug of war. With my essence surging, I felt an explosion of strength, like I could pull down a building. Even so, I was slowly being dragged toward her. Xiao Bai was still terrifyingly strong. We stopped the match, and Xiao Bai looked at me with surprise. Master, you have about 2.4 hunting horses of power. I froze. That was more than double the strength of a normal first-level cultivator. In fact, I had already surpassed most people at the second level. How was this possible? I couldn't believe it. A cultivator at the first level of chi refining was only supposed to have one horse of power. Had those pearls I swallowed earlier really boosted my strength that much? Maybe I had fully absorbed their medicinal energy the moment I broke through. Xiao Bai tilted her head, thinking for a moment. She told me the pearls were likely responsible for improving my spirit roots to the 5 elements middle grade and strengthening my physical body. But my overwhelming essence? That was probably due to my myriad bug sovereign physique. Even though it was a sacred body meant for controlling insects rather than direct combat, it was still a creation of heaven and earth. It was only natural for my essence to be denser than an average cultivator's. She warned me that this was just the beginning. The true advantages of my physique would reveal themselves as I continued to grow. I felt a surge of excitement. Even if I planned to rely on my spirit insects for most of my battles, being strong myself was a massive advantage. I waved my hand, putting Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong back into my storage space, and headed out. I was starving, so I made my way to the dining hall for the preparatory servants to grab a heavy meal. When I stepped out of the hall, I noticed a massive crowd gathered around the bulletin board. People were whispering, their faces pale with worry. I squeezed through the crowd to see what the fuss was about. When I read the notice, my heart skipped a beat. The first rule of the Taishin sect had been changed. I remembered the old rule clearly. Disciples shall not kill one another. Violators face death. Now, it had been rewritten. Disciples shall not kill one another outside of designated dual zones. Violators face cultivation stripping and expulsion. The concept of a dual zone was entirely new. Before, the law enforcement hall handled all disputes. Now, they wouldn't interfere. If you had a problem with someone, you took it to the dual zone and settled it with your lives. Even outside those zones, killing was no longer a death sentence. The punishment was up to expulsion, a flexible term that meant someone with enough influence might barely get a slap on the wrist. But that wasn't the most shocking part. A new clause stated that every 3 months, every disciple, starting from the lowly servants, had the right to challenge anyone at their level or higher. If you won, you could take 1 item from the loser's storage bag. If you lost, the winner took 2 of yours. You weren't allowed to kill during these challenges, but heavy injuries were perfectly legal and required no compensation. The sect was openly encouraging us to rob and fight each other. To balance this brutality, the sect increased our resources. Monthly stipends for ordinary servants went from 2 spirit stones to 3. High-level servants now got 6 stones and a chi-gathering pill. The rewards for outer and inner disciples were even higher. The message was clear: fight, win, and you'll be showered in riches. The crowd around me was in an uproar. Some people were terrified. They called it banditry. One guy even started crying, saying he didn't want to be an immortal anymore and just wanted to go home. He was right. How could anyone sleep soundly knowing they could be robbed or beaten at any moment? The peaceful atmosphere that had lasted for centuries in the Tai Shin sect vanished in a single afternoon. Everyone looked at each other with suspicion and coldness. I left the crowd and headed toward the servant hall. I still needed to register my breakthrough to the first level of chi refining. Once I did, I'd be an official servant, which meant I could challenge others, but I could also be challenged. On the way, I saw 3 different fights. Old grudges were being settled in blood now that the rules had loosened. I saw one disciple arrogantly walk away with his rival's most precious treasure. Another challenger was beaten half to death, his pills and weapons stripped away by the winner. The air in the sect was thick with tension. At the servant hall, a pretty senior sister smiled at me. She congratulated me on becoming an official servant in less than 3 months. She confirmed my new stipend of 3 stones and noted my upcoming exam for the Spirit Beast Peak high-level servant position. It was scheduled for the day after tomorrow. If I missed it, I'd have to wait 6 months to try again. Then, she gave me some unexpected news. Because of the new encouragement rules, any preparatory servant who broke through within 3 months received a special bonus: 10 low-grade spirit stones and a low-grade flying sword. "You're the first one to claim this, junior brother Yi," she said, her eyes filled with envy. I had to work for 1.5 years just to save up enough contribution points for my first sword. She handed me a small pouch and a sleek, bladeless blue sword. I opened the pouch and saw 10 spirit stones glowing with a soft blue light. To someone like me, who still owed Wang Changsheng 3 stones, this was a fortune. I looked at the blue sword. In the cultivation world, weapons were ranked as mortal, spirit, earth, and heaven, with each having 4 subgrades. Even a low-grade mortal tool cost dozens of spirit stones. Anything higher was worth a king's ransom. I gripped the hilt, feeling a spark of excitement. I was dirt poor before this. If I had tried to save up for a sword normally, it would have taken years. I realized then that the new rules weren't all bad. Danger and opportunity always walked hand in hand. At least for today, I was the one reaping the rewards. I didn't hesitate. I drew my black iron dagger and sliced a thin line across my fingertip. A drop of crimson blood fell onto the surface of the small blue sword. It soaked in instantly. The blade began to hum. A strange, spiritual connection sparked between us, as if the sword had become an extension of my own arm. With a single thought, I commanded it to move. The sword transformed into a streak of blue light and shot into the sky. It expanded rapidly, growing to the size of a standard flying sword before circling back to my hand. Behind me, the line of servants watched with eyes full of envy. I could hear their hushed whispers. To them, I was the luckiest man alive. 10 spirit stones and a low-grade artifact sword? Most servants worked 2 years and still couldn't afford a haul like that. I had it on my first day. "Look at him gloat," one whispered, his voice dripping with spite. "He has no idea he's already a target." "Stupid kid," another muttered. "The sect rules are a jungle now. He's only at the first level of chi refining. Any second-level cultivator with a weapon could crush him and take it all." "It's a waste," a third complained. "I just hit the second level. If I hadn't, I'd challenge him right now and take that fat prize for myself." I ignored them. Their jealousy didn't matter to me. I turned back to the pretty senior sister, my heart racing with excitement. Does this sword have a name? I asked. It's a standard issue model from Spirit Blade Peak, she replied casually. I believe they call it the Blue Rainbow. Oh, and since you're now an official servant, you should head to the Palace of Transmission. You're entitled to 1 basic spell and 1 cultivation technique. Thank you, senior sister. Goodbye. The weight that had been pressing down on me for months finally lifted. I actually like these new rules. Since I was at the first level, higher-level cultivators couldn't challenge me. And against anyone at my own level, my spiritual energy was several times more potent than theirs. If anyone asked why I was so strong, I'd just say I found a rare spirit fruit in the mortal world. Even Wang Chongxing and Song Lingtian believed that lie. It was the perfect cover. I tossed the blue rainbow into the air, leaped 3 feet up, and landed on the blade. I wobbled at first, waving my arms to keep my balance. It took a moment to adjust, but soon, I was rising into the air. I steered the sword toward the Palace of Transmission, swaying unsteadily as I flew. The other servants watched, probably hoping I'd fall flat on my face. I didn't. I kept going until their bitter faces disappeared from view. As I climbed higher, the wind whistled past my ears. My vision opened up. The grand architecture of the Tai Xian sect shrank beneath me. I saw white cranes dancing in the clouds and other cultivators streaking past on their own swords. Around me, massive peaks pierced the sky: Tai Xian Peak, Thundercloud Peak, Spirit Blade Peak, and Spirit Beast Peak. The servants lived on Tailing Peak, which was small and plain compared to the others. The Palace of Transmission was located on the most majestic mountain of all, Tai Xian Peak. I wasn't in a rush. I spent the next few hours circling Tailing Peak, practicing my maneuvers. I dived, climbed, and even sat cross-legged on the blade as I drifted through the clouds. I needed to master this. During my practice, I discovered something incredible. A normal first-level cultivator could only fly for about half an hour before their energy ran out. I had been flying for 3 hours, and my dantian was still full. My recovery speed was insane. In a battle of endurance, I would be unstoppable. If my non-combat physique is this strong, I wondered, how terrifying must the actual battle-focused physiques be? Once I felt confident, I turned the sword toward Tai Xian Peak. As I approached, I saw massive white cranes, larger than water buffalo, soaring through the mist. Some disciples were even practicing swordplay on their backs, their blades flashing like cold lightning. I kept my distance. Those cranes were powerful spiritual beasts, some reaching the 10th level of chi refining. I felt a pang of envy watching them, but then I thought of my own companion. My little bug, Xiao Chong, could grow to the size of a calf now. He wasn't as elegant as a crane, but I bet he was faster. Soon, the grand buildings of the main peak came into view. This was the heart of the sect, home to the library, the treasury, and the great hall where the sect leader gave his sermons. There was a massive plaza, miles wide, used for major ceremonies and gatherings between sects. I locked onto the Palace of Transmission and accelerated. A moment later, my boots hit the ground in front of the towering gates. I had arrived. For figures suddenly stepped out from the shadows, surrounding me in a tight circle. My heart sank, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I wonder what business my senior brothers have with me. I asked, my voice steady despite the tension. A third-level chi refining outer disciple led the group, flanked by 3 first-level laundry disciples. They all wore the same predatory grin. The leader, a man named Chen Sheng, took a step forward. "Yilin," he said, his eyes scanning me like I was a piece of meat. "Medium-grade, 5-element spirit root. A founding member of the Longevity Club. You registered your breakthrough to the first level of chi refining this morning and received 10 spirit stones and a low-grade flying sword. Am I right?" Another disciple chimed in, his voice oily. "I also heard Uncle Xianling gave him a bottle of spirit-gathering pills. He just broke through, so there's no way he's used them yet. That bottle is worth as much as a flying sword itself." My expression darkened. "So, you plan to rob me?" I looked them dead in the eye. "The sect rules state you can only challenge someone of the same cultivation level. Are you planning to break the law?" I shouted those last words. My voice echoed across the plaza, reaching every ear within hundreds of meters. Immediately, a crowd of disciples began to gather, whispering and pointing. I wasn't afraid. I knew the Taishan sect enforced its rules with an iron fist. As long as a third-level disciple like Chun Sheng didn't attack me personally, I had a chance. I had prepared for this. I knew that even in a sect, there were good people and monsters. Some seniors had been kind to me, but only because we didn't have conflicting interests. Now that the rules had changed, the villains were coming out of the shadows, and the sect felt like it was covered in a suffocating cloud. I follow the rules, Chun Sheng said coldly. I don't even need to lift a finger. Just hand over the stones, the pills, and the sword. Do it quietly, and you won't get hurt. Don't lose your treasures and your health at the same time. Your little club leader, Song Lingtian, is talented, one of the laundry disciples added. But our Black Sand gang has backing too. Don't expect him to save you. He can barely protect himself right now. He's lucky if he can keep the high-grade Qixia sword the Peak Master gave him. It was clear the Black Sand gang had been watching the Palace of Transmission. They knew exactly when I'd gotten my rewards. They were prepared, but so was I. I let out a cold laugh and cupped my hands in a mock gesture of respect. Giving you my treasures? You must be dreaming. If you want them, come and take them. The atmosphere turned lethal. Chun Sheng laughed, a harsh, grating sound. I thought you were smart, but you're just another fool looking for a shortcut to the grave. Fine. It's a waste of my junior brother's challenge rights, but we'll teach you a lesson. You'll owe them 30 spirit stones later to make up for the trouble. He nodded to a disciple named Li Lei. Li Lei pulled out his identity jade and flooded it with spiritual energy. I, Li Lei, a laundry disciple, use my challenge right today, he shouted. I challenge laundry disciple Yilin. Both of us are at the first level of qi refining. I request the Hall of Law to witness. In the Taishan sect, public challenges had to be overseen by the Hall of Law. Without a witness, it was considered murdering a fellow disciple, a crime punished by death. Moments later, 3 streaks of light descended from the sky. 3 disciples in pale red robes landed, the signature color of the Hall of Law. 2 women and 1 man. The leader was at the 8th level of qi refining, while the other 2 were at the 7th. Their presence was heavy and commanding. The leader glanced at us. The 17th squad of the Hall of Law is here to witness. Both parties are at the first level of qi refining. The challenge is valid. Everyone, back up 30 feet. One of the female officers commanded. Combatants, stand 10 feet apart. The crowd retreated, the air thick with gossip. Poor kid, someone whispered. I heard his whole caravan was slaughtered by demons on the way here. He's the only survivor. Now he finally makes it to the first level, and the Black Sand gang is already picking him clean. It's a guaranteed loss, another added. Yilin just broke through. He hasn't learned any spells or sword techniques. Those Black Sand guys have been at the first level for years. They have experience. Yilin, just give them what they want. It's not worth getting hurt. You're too handsome to get your face smashed in. The squad leader raised his hand. Begin. Li Lei didn't waste words. He slapped his storage bag, and a blue streak of light shot out. It was a blue-red sword, the same model as mine. He pinched a sword gesture, fueled it with energy, and hissed, "Go!" The sword hummed and shot through the air, aiming straight for my Dantian. I didn't move. I didn't dodge. I just gripped my own sword, felt the massive surge of spiritual energy rushing through my veins, and took a single step forward. The ground cracked under my boot. I moved so fast I became a blur. How is that possible? Someone screamed. The Hall of Law officer's eyes widened. The aura coming off me wasn't that of a normal first-level cultivator. It was far more explosive. Clang. The sound of metal hitting metal was deafening. Sparks flew. With one overhead strike, I smashed Li Lei's flying sword out of the air. It spun away, trembling. Li Lei's face went white. The confidence vanished from his eyes, replaced by pure terror. He tried to scramble backward, but he was moving in slow motion compared to me. I closed the gap in a heartbeat. There was a wet thud. My blue-red sword buried itself deep into Li Lei's Dantian. I stood there, calm and silent, as I slowly pulled the blood-stained blade out of his body. The plaza went dead quiet. The fight was over. The crowd stood frozen. Most of them were speechless, their eyes wide with disbelief. I didn't say a word. I just took a step back and gave Li Lei a mock bow. Thanks for the lesson, senior brother, I said calmly. The squad leader finally snapped out of his shock. He gave me a long, hard look before raising his voice to announce the result. I had won. According to the rules, I had the right to pick 2 items from Li Lei's storage bag as my spoils of war. Li Lei was still on the ground, clutching his stomach. He pointed a trembling finger at me, coughed up a mouthful of bright red blood, and collapsed. His life was effectively over. In the world of cultivation, a destroyed Dantian meant you could no longer store energy. He was a cripple now, forever cut off from the path to immortality. It had all happened in a flash. I had moved so fast he didn't even have time to scream, "I surrender," before my blade pierced him. No one expected me to be this ruthless. No one expected a new recruit to hide this much power. The leader of the Black Sand Society, a 3rd-level cultivator named Zhou, looked like he wanted to kill me. The 2 other lackeys behind him were pale, sweat dripping down their foreheads. They knew that if they had been the ones to challenge me, they'd be lying in the dirt right next to Li Lei. They had picked a fight with the wrong person. "Useless trash," Zhou hissed, glancing at his fallen comrade. I didn't care about his insults. I reached out and grabbed the blue-red sword I had knocked away earlier. Then, I walked over to Li Lei's unconscious body and snatched the storage bag from his waist. Inside, I found a small pouch containing 20 spirit stones. It was likely everything he owned. The sword and the stones were mine now. A moment later, a white crane descended from the sky. The sect's medical disciples hopped down, loaded Li Lei's broken body onto the bird, and flew off. All that was left of him were 2 dark bloodstains on the stone floor. The onlookers started whispering. They weren't stupid. A normal 1st-level cultivator shouldn't be able to shatter a senior's defense that easily. My spiritual energy was way too dense. "Wait," the squad leader said, turning to me. "Are you really just at the 1st level? Or are you hiding your true cultivation?" I bowed again, keeping my expression humble. "Senior brother, back in the mortal realm, I once swallowed a strange, glowing pearl. I think it was some kind of rare heavenly treasure. My energy has been unusually strong ever since. Is that against the rules?" The leader paused, then nodded slowly. It made sense to him. Swallowing a rare herb or treasure could definitely explain an explosive boost in power. It wasn't against the rules, it was just incredibly lucky. He turned to the Black Sand Society members. "If there are no more challenges, we're leaving." Zhou's face was twisted in anger. He had come here to bully a newcomer, but he realized I wasn't prey. I was a predator. There was no point in continuing the fight if I could crush anyone at the 1st level. "We're done here," Zhou growled to his men. "Let's go." He gave me one last hateful look. "Enjoy your luck while it lasts, Yilin. A treasure might give you a head start, but it won't keep you ahead forever. We'll meet again." He turned to walk away, his 2 terrified lackeys scurrying after him. But I wasn't finished. I blurred across the pavement, blocking their path with my blood-stained sword held low. "You think you can just walk away after trying to rob me?" I asked. My voice was ice cold. Everyone gasped. Was I really challenging them now? "What do you want?" Zhou barked. "You can't challenge me. The rules say you can only challenge those at your own level or higher, but nobody is stupid enough to jump 2 levels. He was right. A 3rd-level cultivator had 3 times the energy of a 1st level. He also knew actual spells and sword techniques. I knew my limits. I wasn't going to fight him, yet. I laughed. "I'm not an idiot. I'm not challenging you, Zhou. I'm challenging the 2 behind you." The 2 lackeys turned white. They remembered what happened to Li Lei's Dantian. They were shaking so hard they could barely stand. They knew that if I stepped onto that stage with them, I wouldn't just beat them. I would ruin them. "Senior brother Zhou, help us," one of them wailed. "I don't want to be a cripple. My parents are counting on me." Zhou looked like he had swallowed a fly. He couldn't stop the challenge if I initiated it. The rules were the rules. I looked at the 2 terrified boys and let out a small, harmless-looking smile. "Look, I'm a reasonable man. I don't like holding grudges. A challenge right is valuable. I can only do it once every 3 months." I leaned in closer. "If you don't want to end up like Li Lei, there's a way out. Each of you gives me 20 spirit stones, or 1 magic tool. Do that, and I'll consider this matter settled. I'm generous like that." I stared at their storage bags, my smile widening. I wasn't a nice person. Before I came to this sect, I was a servant. I knew exactly how cruel the world was, and I knew that in this life, you either take or you get taken. And today, I was taking everything. I never cared much for the gentleman's code. My reasons for demanding payment were purely practical. The sect rules only allowed me to challenge someone once every 3 months. If I actually fought one of these Black Sand Society goons, I'd only get 1 victory and 1 prize. But by using a little intimidation, I could squeeze both of them dry without breaking a sweat. I had been starving for resources lately. Standing next to my wealthy friends only made me feel poorer. To me, finding a way to make money was the only truth that mattered. Besides, a challenge right is like a loaded gun. It's much more terrifying before you pull the trigger. Once I used it, the threat would be gone. The crowd realized what I was doing. They saw me using the rules and my reputation as an unbeatable first-level cultivator to rob the robbers. I was taking 2 prizes at once without throwing a single punch. Yi Ling is a genius, someone whispered. He's the king of counter-robbery. Watching the Black Sand Society get shaken down is the best thing I've seen all year, another added. They've been bullies for too long. It's about time they got what was coming to them. Even the 3 intersect disciples from the law enforcement team were suppressed smiles. Most people in the Taishan sect still had a sense of justice. They wanted to see the bad guys pay. The 3 Black Sand members looked like they wanted to crawl into a hole. Zhou Yong, their leader, glared at me with pure hatred. If looks could kill, I'd have a sword through my heart already. If he let me rob his subordinates, the society's reputation would be trashed. Have some backbone. Zhou hissed at his lackeys. Go up there and fight him. He only has 1 challenge right. Only one of you has to face him. The 2 lackeys looked like their world was ending. They completely lost it. Senior brother Zhou, you're not the one going up there, one wailed. Your Dantian isn't the one getting stabbed. You don't care because it's not your life on the line. This is too much, the other yelled. When we joined, you said you'd protect us. You said you'd help us get rich and become immortals. Now you're sending us to our deaths. I'm out. I quit the Black Sand Society right now. Me too. I'm done. They turned to the crowd, shouting at the top of their lungs. Everyone, look at their true faces. They take the profits, and you take the deaths. Don't ever join these people. Zhou Yong's face went from red to purple. He gripped his sword so hard his hand shook. He had tried to protect the society's dignity, but he had only succeeded in making 2 members quit in public. The society's prestige was crumbling before his eyes. You ungrateful brats, Zhou stammered. You're dead. The law enforcement team is standing right here. One of the defectors snapped back. If I die mysteriously tomorrow, everyone will know it was you, Zhou Yong. You think your little club is stronger than the law enforcement elders? They're core formation experts. One look from them would turn you to ash. Zhou Yong was fuming so hard I thought his head might explode. He didn't say another word. He jumped onto his flying sword and sped off toward Thundercloud Peak. Senior brother Zhou, I called out after him, my voice dripping with fake concern. You messed up big time today. You ruined the society's name. They're going to punish you severely when you get back. Why not just quit now? Become a whistleblower. Tell the law enforcement team everything they've done, and maybe you'll live. I flashed him another innocent smile. I'm a good person, Zhou. Take my advice. Don't go back. Death is waiting for you there. Zhou actually paused in midair. He looked conflicted. My logic was a bit exaggerated, but he knew I was right. News of this disaster would spread through the entire sect by sunset. Given how the Black Sand Society operated, he was definitely going to suffer. Just as he was debating his life choices, a streak of purple light slashed across the sky. A heavy, crushing pressure settled over the area, making it hard to breathe. A young man in purple robes descended on a flying sword. He had long, messy hair and 2 massive curved blades strapped to his back. A black bandage was wrapped diagonally over one eye. His aura was overwhelming. He was at the 13th level of chi refinement. Most people step into the foundation establishment stage at level 12. Only true geniuses push to level 13 or higher to build a foundation so solid it borders on the divine. This man was one of those geniuses. He was Ren Wuya, the leader of the Black Sand Society and one of the 5 great talents of the Taishan sect. The crowd went silent. Even the law enforcement members bowed respectfully. Greetings, Senior Brother Ren. Ren Wuya looked down at everyone, but his gaze eventually locked onto me. My heart hammered against my ribs. It felt like being stared at by a predator. Rumor had it he had escaped from Foundation establishment demon cultivators and even wounded them. I know what happened today, Renwuya said calmly. His voice was steady, but it carried a strange weight. Junior brother Yilin, you are impressive. You are ruthless, intelligent, and you know how to manipulate the rules to your advantage. Your talent isn't bad, either. You have a future. He paused, his one visible eye tracking my every move. Would you like to join the Black Sand Society? Work for me, and I will give you extra treasures to aid your cultivation. The crowd gasped. They expected him to crush me, not recruit me. Even I was stunned for a second. I looked up at him, my brow furrowing. There were a few things I hated in this world. I hated being looked down upon. I hated being spoken to like a servant. And I absolutely hated the idea of being someone's dog. Senior brother Run. I began, my voice flat. I have no interest in the Black Sand Society, I said. My voice was flat. I didn't even try to hide the lack of respect in my tone. I spoke to Renwuya as if we were equals. I was no longer that lowly servant who bowed his head to everyone he met. I had my own dignity now. I had blood in my veins, not ice water. I didn't need a master to toss me scraps like a dog. Renwuya narrowed his eye. Oh, so you're angry about the Black Sand Society's unfair methods? You don't want to associate with us. I shook my head. I don't believe absolute fairness exists anywhere. I just don't like it. You don't like it? Renwuya let out a short, dry laugh. Interesting. Yilin, I'll remember you. He turned his gaze toward the Black Sand member who had started this whole mess. The man looked like his soul had already left his body. Under Renwuya's stare, he collapsed. Senior brother Ren, the man wailed, hitting the ground with a thud. I am loyal. I live for the Black Sand Society. Please, have mercy. Renwuya looked at him with pure coldness. Stupid trash. From now on, you are no longer a member. Next time, try using your brain before you speak. As soon as the words left his mouth, Renwuya turned into a streak of purple light. In the blink of an eye, he vanished. The entire crowd let out a collective breath. The pressure he exerted was terrifying. People whispered that his power already surpassed most Foundation establishment cultivators. They said he had reached the 12th level but refused to break through because he was chasing a heavenly foundation, a feat no one in the Dragon Mountain range had achieved in 500 years. He was a monster who had found an ancient ruin and consumed a 1,000-year-old snow lotus to gain a top-tier water spirit root. Why would someone like him start something as disgusting as the Black Sand Society? Someone muttered. He has elders backing him. He doesn't lack resources. Maybe he just thinks it's fun, another replied. He's a freak. All 5 of the great talents are weirdos. I can't believe he came here for a nobody like Yilin, a third voice added. He actually tried to recruit a level 1 chi refiner. And Yilin turned him down. What a fool. Most people would die for an opportunity like that. I ignored them. Once I was sure Renwuya was truly gone, I let out a soft sigh of relief. My heart was still pounding. He could have killed me with a flick of his finger. I was terrified of ending my journey before it even began, but I was more terrified of being a slave again. I was a bird that had finally escaped its cage. No matter how dangerous the sky was, I was never going back inside. Besides, I had the bug world and the legacy of the Yi family. One day, I would be greater than Renwuya. I turned back to the 2 disciples who had just quit the society. I flashed them a friendly, harmless smile. So, brothers, I said, have you thought it over? You left the society, but our debt isn't settled yet. I never forgot about money. I grew up with nothing, so I was obsessed with filling my pockets. To me, being poor was a physical ache I had to cure. The 2 disciples exchanged a bitter look. One of them sighed. Senior brother Yi, you're clearly the stronger one here. I have 20 spirit stones. I'd like to settle our grievance and become friends. The other one jumped in immediately. I have 20 as well. They handed over 2 small pouches. I opened them, and my eyes practically glowed at the sight of the shimmering stones. 40 spirit stones. Perfect. Good. Good. I said, my smile becoming even warmer. I'm not the type to hold a grudge. Feel free to challenge me again anytime. If you win, the stones are yours. You're joking, senior brother. They stammered, backing away. Who would dare challenge you? They turned and ran as fast as their legs could carry them. I felt great. In one trip to the scripture pavilion, I had gained a high-quality sword and 60 spirit stones. I finally understood why the Black Sand Society robbed people. It was the fastest way to get rich. Still, I couldn't bring myself to bully the weak just yet. I used to be the weak one. I didn't want to become the thing I hated so quickly. I joined the long line and finally entered the scripture pavilion. It was a massive building with 5 floors, divided by rank: servants, outer disciples, inner disciples, foundation establishment, and core formation. I walked up to the counter and handed over my Jade ID. An old man with white hair and a kind face looked it over. I couldn't feel a single ripple of spiritual energy from him, which meant he was likely a powerful master hiding his strength. "You've just become a servant," the old man said. "You can choose one basic cultivation method or one spell or sword technique from the first floor. Bring it to me to be copied." I bowed respectfully and stepped inside. Rows upon rows of bookshelves filled the room, packed with jade slips. The floor was split into 4 sections: cultivation methods, spells, sword techniques, and miscellaneous, which held everything from palm techniques to body tempering. Everything was graded: heaven, earth, black, and yellow. Each grade was further split into top, high, middle, and low tiers. As a servant, I only had access to the yellow grade, middle, and low tiers. The difference between low and middle wasn't huge, but I knew that mastering the basics was the only way to eventually reach the higher tier techniques. I began to walk through the aisles, searching for the one thing that would truly help me survive. I realized quickly that cultivation wasn't a shortcut to godhood. You couldn't just grab a legendary technique and become a master overnight. It was a slow, grinding process of building strength bit by bit. Even a genius like Song Lingtian, who had already become an inner disciple and had access to top-tier yellow-grade techniques, started from the very bottom. He didn't skip steps, and neither could I. As a new servant, I was allowed to pick 2 items from the thousands of jade slips in the pavilion. One of them had to be a cultivation heart method. I headed straight for the heart method section, where the techniques were categorized by the 5 elements: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. A heart method's primary job was to boost the strength of your spiritual energy. Take Lilei, the guy I just beat, for example. His heart method was weak, giving him almost no boost at all. That's why my raw power of 2.4 galloping horses managed to crush him easily. But each element offered a different perk. Gold methods increased explosive power, making spells faster and sharper. Wood methods provided endless vitality, speeding up recovery so you wouldn't run out of energy during a long fight. Water methods were smooth and constant, making it easier to break through cultivation bottlenecks. Fire increased the raw destructive power of offensive spells, while earth turned your defensive spells into unbreakable walls. Since I possessed all 5 elemental roots, I could technically learn anything. Usually, a cultivator picks one main element and maybe a second one to support it. But they have to be careful. If you pick elements that conflict, like water and fire, your energy will turn into a chaotic mess. At best, you lose your progress. At worst, you explode. I wandered between the shelves, feeling conflicted. I wanted it all. I didn't want to give up any of those elemental perks. If other disciples knew what I was thinking, they would have laughed in my face. With my mediocre talent, mastering one element was already a stretch. Trying to master 5 was pure suicide. But I knew the rules. If I picked fire, I'd have to give up water and gold because they clashed. I'd be stuck with fire, wood, and earth. I hated that limitation. Then, I saw a dusty book tucked away in a corner. I picked it up, blew off a thick layer of grime, and read the title, The 5 Elements Primordial Chaos Manual. My eyes lit up as I scanned the pages. This technique was found thousands of years ago by the founder of our sect, the Tai Xian ancestor, inside an ancient cultivator's cave. It was a broken, incomplete manual specifically designed for people with all 5 elemental roots. The manual only had the first 3 levels, but the stats were insane. Reaching the first level increased your spiritual energy strength by 50%. If I had 2 horses of power, it would hit like 3. The second level doubled your power. The third level tripled it. My heart hammered against my ribs. If my base strength reached 3 horses and I hit the third level, I'd have 9 horses of power. I could easily crush cultivators at the 4th or 5th level of chi refinement. This wasn't just some low-tier yellow-grade scrap. It was something else entirely. But there was a catch. There's always a catch. The manual was incredibly difficult to learn and dangerous to practice. To progress, I had to swallow 5 elements chi in perfectly equal amounts. If the balance shifted even slightly, my body wouldn't be able to handle the chaotic energy. The records showed that 5 disciples had tried this before me. Most spent 10 years without even reaching the 1st level. They all eventually gave up in despair. Despite the warnings, I couldn't put it down. It felt like this manual was waiting for me. It was hard, sure, but I had the bug world. I could grow my own elemental plants and harvest the chi myself without spending a fortune on materials. You should think twice, young man. I jumped. The white-haired old man from the counter was suddenly standing right next to me. In my time here, he said, at least 10 people have tried the Primordial Chaos Manual. They wasted all their resources and years of their lives, only to end up with nothing. Greed has a price. I went quiet for a moment, then looked at him. Did any of them actually explode? The old man stroked his beard. Not recently, but about 100 years ago, one man messed up the balance. His death was unpleasant. I wasn't in charge of this floor back then, but the stories remained. I nodded. So it's not guaranteed death. I'll take it. My logic was simple. I had a shortcut. My spatial world could provide the resources I needed to maintain the balance. If it didn't work out, I'd just stop and switch to something else later once I earned more contribution points. The only thing I'd lose was time. The old man sighed, seeing I wouldn't budge. If you're set on this, I suggest you pick a body tempering technique for your second choice. If your physical body and meridians are strong, the chances of you exploding go down significantly. But keep in mind, you won't have any flashy attack spells. The kids from the Black Sand Gang are already targeting you. You'll be vulnerable. I nodded respectfully. I understand, senior. Thank you for the advice. I looked at the old man and spoke clearly. My ambition is to join the Spirit Beast Peak. I want to become a beast tamer. If I can raise spiritual insects to handle my offense and defense, then flashy spells and sword techniques aren't strictly necessary for me. The old man stroked his beard, his eyes narrowing as he processed my words. Your logic is sound. You have a clear head. He gave me a small nod of approval, turned around, and disappeared back into the shadows of the pavilion. I bowed deeply toward his retreating back. Thank you for the guidance, senior. If it weren't for his warning, I probably wouldn't have looked twice at body tempering techniques. They were widely considered the most useless path in the cultivation world. But right now, survival was my priority. I needed to be durable. I clutched the jade slip for the 5 Elements Primordial Chaos Manual and headed straight for the miscellaneous section. My target was clear: body tempering. These techniques were designed to hone the physical form, making the body stronger, more resilient, and packed with vitality. In the cultivation world, those who specialized in this were mockingly called iron tortoises. They could take a beating like nobody's business, but they were slow. Against a cultivator who could fly on a sword or blast spells from a distance, an iron tortoise was just a punching bag that couldn't hit back. That was why these manuals were so unpopular. I found the shelf and noticed it was covered in a thick layer of dust. It wasn't quite as buried as the Chaos Manual, but it was close. I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I had just started my journey toward immortality, and I was already becoming a total freak. A discarded cultivation heart method and a mocked body technique. I was really collecting the bottom of the barrel. Still, I knew what I was doing. I scanned the shelves, reading through the descriptions until I found a specific jade slip. The title was bold: The 5 Elements Vajra Body. This wasn't just any body tempering method. It was known as a technique for madmen. The process involved forcing the raw energy of the 5 elements directly into the flesh and blood. It was described as an excruciating, agonizing process of refinement. But unlike my main cultivation method, this energy wouldn't go into my dantian, so there was no risk of them interfering with each other. The only downsides were the extreme pain and the massive drain on one's spiritual sense. The upside? Once mastered, your body would be like divine iron. Flying swords and spells wouldn't even be able to scratch your skin. I took the slip to the white-haired old man. He looked at my choice, nodded slowly, and handed me 2 brand new copies of the slips. These copies will shatter 2 hours after you link your consciousness to them, he warned. You must memorize everything within that time. Also, these techniques are for you alone. If you share them with others, the sect will hunt you down. I understand, I replied. I walked out of the pavilion as night fell. A silver moon hung over the Taishin sect, casting a pale glow over the mountains. For a mortal, this would be pitch black, but I circulated my mana into my eyes. My vision flared with spiritual light, and the blurry world snapped into perfect focus. This was the Spirit Eye technique. It allowed me to see through darkness and even detect the hidden auras of demons or disguised cultivators. It drained mana quickly for most, but with my recovery speed, I could keep my spirit eyes open forever without breaking a sweat. I leaped into the air, landing lightly on my flying sword. I didn't head back to the servant quarters. Instead, I steered toward the Taishin market. As I soared through the clouds, the wind whipping past my face, I looked down at the vast sect. Occasionally, I'd see a flash of cold light in the distance, other disciples practicing their sword forms late into the night. It felt surreal. Just 2 months ago, I was a lowly servant in the Lin household, living at the mercy of others. Now, I was a cultivator. If old Master Lin saw me now, he'd have to drop to his knees and call me immortal. My mind drifted to Lin Xiaoyu. We weren't close, but I couldn't help but wonder what happened to her and the others kidnapped by the demonic cultivators. The more I learned about this world, the more I realized how cruel it was. They were likely dead, or worse. I sighed, shaking the dark thoughts away. I couldn't save them. I could only save myself. I dove down toward a brightly lit valley filled with the hum of voices. At the entrance stood a massive stone monument glowing with silver light. It bore 5 powerful characters, Taishin Sect Market. Originally, this place was built for internal trade among sect members. But over the centuries, it had grown into a massive hub where disciples from other sects and rogue cultivators came to barter. A few hundred years ago, it was the largest market in the region. Even though the Taishin sect had declined since then, the valley was still bustling with life and opportunity. I landed my sword and stepped into the light, ready to see what my new life had to offer. The business here used to be even bigger, but the other 2 major sects teamed up and snatched most of the trade away. Still, the Taishin market was incredible. It was packed with rare treasures and thousands of cultivators moving back and forth every day. I had been dying to see this place for a long time. Back when I was a candidate, I didn't have a single spirit stone to my name, and my movements were restricted to the servant quarters. Now, I finally had a little bit of wealth and the freedom to explore. I walked up to the entrance, where an inner disciple stood guard. He looked at me with a friendly smile. "Junior brother, entry to the market requires 1 spirit stone and a registration of your identity." I knew the rules. The Taishin sect didn't run this place for charity. They ran it to make a profit. It hurt a little to part with it, but I handed over 1 spirit stone and my identity jade plate. After checking my credentials, the disciple nodded. "You're good to go, Junior brother Yi," he said. Then he leaned in, his tone helpful. "Since it's your first time, here's a tip. Try to stick to the big shops with good reputations. The small shops and roadside stalls might look like a bargain, but if you aren't experienced, you'll end up losing big while trying to save a little." Another inner disciple nearby chimed in with a grin. "Junior brother, I'm also selling masks that hide your aura. They're only for sect members. Once you're inside the market's formation, this mask will block anyone below the core formation stage from seeing your true face. It even works outside. Anyone below the foundation establishment stage won't be able to peer through it with their divine sense. Only 800 spirit stones. A fair price for your safety." 800 spirit stones? I nearly choked. That was enough to make most inner disciples feel despair, let alone a servant like me. I cupped my hands politely. "Thank you, senior brothers. I understand." I didn't even look back at the masked salesman as I stepped into the market area. My heart was racing with excitement. My main goal today was to buy seeds for spiritual herbs. I needed to plant them in my bug world to see how they grew. This was vital. If the experiment failed or the herbs grew too slowly, I'd never be able to afford the resources needed for the 5 elements mixed yuan script I had just received. As I walked in, I saw 2 massive, ornate buildings lining the wide stone path. One was called the Treasure Pavilion, and the other was the Hall of Miraculous Pills. Beautiful female cultivators stood outside both entrances, greeting guests with professional smiles. When I sensed their cultivation levels, I shivered. Both of them were at the 5th level of chi refining. They were top tier compared to most outer disciples, and certainly much stronger than me. Yet here they were, acting as waitresses for anyone walking by. I noticed the signs on these shops identified them as directly managed by Taishan sect. This meant they were the sect's official businesses. I started to head toward the treasure pavilion, but a smiling female cultivator stepped out and blocked my path. "Little junior brother," she said softly. "Entry to the treasure pavilion requires a minimum cultivation of the 3rd level of chi refining." I stood there, frozen in awkwardness. I didn't realize that having money wasn't enough. You actually had to be strong enough just to walk through the door. I didn't have much money anyway. I just wanted to look around and learn, but it looked like that plan was dead. Feeling a bit disappointed, I kept walking deeper into the market. The crowds weren't too thick. Most people wore the robes of the Taishan sect. I didn't see many servants. It was mostly outer and inner disciples. I also spotted cultivators from other sects. There were disciples from the Taiji sect in elegant white robes, and people from the Taitsong sect in luxurious yellow. Both groups walked with their heads held high, looking down on the Taishan disciples as if we were beneath them. I even saw some rogue cultivators dressed in flashy, jewel-encrusted robes. They looked wealthy and powerful, but I noticed they were the most polite of all, bowing and smiling to everyone from the big sects. They knew they couldn't afford to offend anyone. The further I went, the more shops I saw, though none were as grand as the official sect stores. Eventually, I reached the chaotic, noisy stall area. Here, anyone could set up a table for a fee of 10 spirit stones a day. This was the best place to learn about the world. Sellers were screaming at the top of their lungs. Freshly forged mid-grade flying sword. No wear and tear. Only 100 spirit stones. "Don't listen to him," someone yelled back. "That sword is a refurbished piece of junk. I bought one from him before, and it snapped after 2 moves in a fight. I barely escaped with my life." "You're lying," the seller barked back. Nearby, another man was shouting, "Healing pills. 10% off. You need these for the road. An extra pill is an extra life. Ancient treasures found in a cultivator's cave. Only 30 stones each. Find your destiny here. Clearance sale. Mid-grade robes for female cultivators. Sexy, cute, or elegant. We have it all." I walked through the chaos, eyes wide, taking everything in. I saw so many things I wanted, but I didn't dare spend a cent. My entire net worth was 70 spirit stones and 1 slightly used blue-red flying sword. In this place, I was a pauper. I realized why you rarely saw servants here. With a servant's tiny salary, coming here was a waste of a spirit stone just for the entry fee. They probably spent all their time earning sect contribution points just to survive. Seeing all these treasures made my heart burn with a new desire. I wanted to get rich. If I had enough spirit stones, I could buy anything I wanted. I finally left the stalls and found a medium-sized shop called the 100 Herb Hall. An old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles greeted me. He was at the 5th level of chi refining. "Young man, what do you need? We buy herbs at 80% of market value and sell seeds and century-old plants. We've been here for hundreds of years. Fair prices for everyone." I asked about the prices for seeds of the 5 elements. I didn't buy anything immediately, though. I moved on to 7 or 8 other shops, comparing prices. I might be new to this, but I knew better than to take the first deal I saw. Eventually, I found the cheapest shop in the area. I spent 30 spirit stones and walked away with 500 seeds of various 5-element spiritual herbs. It was time to see if my secret world could really change my fate. I walked away with 500 seeds, 100 for each of the 5 elements. I didn't linger in the market. I headed straight back to the preparatory servant dorms. I wasn't in a hurry to read the cultivation manuals I'd bought. Instead, I focused my mind. I called out to Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong. They were sleeping inside the bug world. Since I couldn't physically enter the space myself yet, they were my hands and feet inside. A month ago, this place was a barren desert. Then, I had tossed in a single blade of grass. Now, green life was everywhere. The desert had transformed into a small oasis. I realized this was why plants grew so fast here. Xiao Bai's white snake body was barely visible through the tall weeds, and Xiao Chong was completely buried under the greenery. I flicked a thought into the space. Instantly, the weeds withered and crumbled into the sand. I was the master of this world. I could make it lush or leave it barren with a single wish. I needed every bit of nutrients for my new spirit herbs, not common weeds. I wanted a space filled with treasures, not trash. I sent the 5 bags of seeds into the space. Xiao Chong grabbed them, his pincers clicking with excitement. Following my orders, he dug rows of deep holes in the sandy soil. Xiao Bai used her spiritual power to guide the seeds. They flew from the bags and landed perfectly in the pits. Then, the soil shifted on its own, burying them deep. Cultivator farming was much faster than mortal labor. In less than an hour, all 500 seeds were planted in neat rows. I can't wait for them to sprout, Xiao Chong said through our mental link. I want to sleep in a field of medicine. If I get hungry, I'll just wake up and eat the fruit. Xiao Bai was more practical. Master, if you want them to grow fast, you'll need spirit stones. Their speed depends entirely on your wallet. My heart ached as I sent 10 spirit stones into the bug world. It was a test. I just hoped I wasn't throwing money away. As soon as the stones entered the space, they dissolved into 10 clouds of pale blue mist. Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong looked intoxicated, like they were breathing in my very lifeblood. Master, Xiao Bai cried out. The spiritual energy here is incredibly dense. It feels like you didn't just use 10 stones. It feels like 100, maybe even 1,000. Before she even finished speaking, tiny green shoots poked through the sand. A blink later, they were an inch tall. Bright green leaves unfurled right before my eyes. They're growing. They're growing. Xiao Chong waved his pincers, cheering. Inside this space, he could communicate with me perfectly through his thoughts. I was shaking with excitement. These were spirit herbs. In the best fields of the Taishan sect, they would take months just to sprout. In the wild, it could take decades. Here, it took seconds. It was a miracle. The bug world was even more powerful than I imagined. But the excitement didn't last. Once the herbs reached 2 inches in height, they stopped. The growth became invisible to the naked eye. What happened? Xiao Chong grumbled. I thought I'd be harvesting century-old herbs by dinner. I thought we were going to be rich. The spiritual energy dropped, Xiao Bai explained. Master, you need more stones to keep them moving. My mood soured. I realized getting rich wasn't going to be that easy. If I grew these to 100-year maturity, they'd be worth hundreds of spirit stones. My total investment was only 40 stones so far. In the mortal world, century-old meant growing for 100 years in thin energy. In a sect, it took 10 years. Here, it seemed like it could take days, if I had the cash. Xiao Bai, I asked, how many stones will it take to get all 500 to maturity? She looked dejected. They're just sprouts. To make them usable for medicine? Probably thousands of spirit stones. My mind went numb. Thousands. If I spent thousands to grow them and sold the batch for less than 1,000, I was just burning money. The only advantage was speed. If I had thousands of stones to waste, I'd just buy the herbs from a shop. Why go through this? My heart sank to my stomach. If I couldn't mass-produce these herbs cheaply, I couldn't fuel my cultivation. My trip to the Sutra Hall was a waste. Don't lose heart, Master, Xiao Bai whispered. This is a family heirloom. It won't be this simple. We just need to explore its secrets. I took a deep breath. She was right. Maybe this space wasn't meant for farming. My family were insect masters, not alchemists. Maybe this place was designed for the bugs themselves. Regardless, I was down 40 spirit stones. I only had 30 left. I couldn't even sell the seedlings. If I bought seeds on Monday and sold rare seedlings on Wednesday, someone would realize I had a treasure. I'd be dead within a week. I was brooding over my loss when Xiao Bai spoke up again. Master, you just reminded me of something. You are from a lineage of insect controllers. Everything in this ring must relate to that. What if these herbs aren't for selling? She slithered closer to one of the tiny green sprouts, her eyes narrowing. I sensed a strange, alluring scent drifting through the air. It was faint, likely because the spirit herbs hadn't fully matured yet, but it was there. Xiao Bai, I said, my eyes lighting up. Can you try eating a leaf? The seeds I had bought were non-toxic, so there was no risk. Xiaobai lowered her massive head and gently bit off a tender green leaf from a metal attribute herb. She chewed slowly, savoring the flavor, and swallowed. A moment later, her eyes widened with surprise. Master, I think I understand. The herbs grown in this soil are different. They're becoming more suitable for us to consume. The 5-element energy within them is much more intense. She flexed her body. I just ate one metal leaf, and I can already feel my scales and teeth getting tougher. The effect is small now, but it's definitely there. I grinned. So that was it. This mysterious space wasn't meant for standard farming. It was designed to cultivate specialized medicine for spirit insects. Xiaobai, you're a genius, I praised. She tilted her head, looking a bit proud. Thank you, Master. Everything clicked. Growing these herbs to full maturity would cost a fortune, but the payoff was massive. They weren't ordinary spirit herbs anymore. They were mutated, enhanced versions specifically modified by the bug world. While this meant I could never sell them on the open market, since no one would understand what they were, I didn't care. If I couldn't sell them, I'd use them myself. These herbs would boost Xiaobai and Xiaochang's strength. Plus, since they were packed with 5-element energy, I could use them to fuel my own cultivation of the 5 elements primordial manual. It would make my progress twice as fast. I also had a bold idea. Up until now, I'd been using my own blood to feed my insects. My blood was precious and limited. I couldn't feed a whole army that way. But these herbs? I could mass-produce them. Of course, that brought me back to the ultimate problem facing every mortal and cultivator alike: how to get rich. I was down to 30 spirit stones and a slightly worn red-blue sword worth maybe 20 more. 50 stones total. I had to be careful. Back in the mortal world, I thought immortals lived in palaces of gold and jade. I never expected that even after becoming one, I'd still be broke. At least I wasn't starting from zero. I shifted my mindset and looked at the field. Growing 500 herbs was impossible right now. I didn't have thousands of stones. Xiaobai, Xiaochang, I called out. Dig up the seedlings. Leave only 10 of each attribute. We'll keep 50 in the ground and save the rest. Understood, Master, they chirped in unison. Xiaochang started digging with his massive pincers, looking a bit like a glorified dung beetle as he carefully avoided the roots. Xiaobai used her magic to lift the seedlings out, sorting them into 5 neat piles. In this space, the seedlings wouldn't wither. I could replant them whenever I had the cash. I just didn't want them sucking up the limited spiritual energy in the air for now. An hour later, the work was done. I took a deep breath and threw my remaining 30 spirit stones into the space. The stones shattered, dissolving into a thick mist of spiritual energy. The 50 remaining plants drank it up greedily. Stems thickened. Leaves unfurled. The metal attribute sword grass began to shimmer with a golden hue, its long leaves turning as sharp as daggers. The wood attribute wood snail grass started looking like a giant, glowing radish. The water attribute frost grass turned translucent, emitting a chilling mist. The fire attribute red cloud grass glowed like a sunset, radiating heat. And the earth attribute sweet potato vines grew thick and heavy, crawling 10 meters across the soil. Then, the energy vanished. My 30 stones were gone, completely used up. The herbs still weren't at the 100-year quality level yet. If I tried to sell these at a market, most alchemists wouldn't even look at them because low-year herbs could make a furnace explode. But for me, they were perfect. Xiaobai, Xiaochang, I said. From now on, you each eat 1 herb of a different attribute every 4 days to strengthen yourselves. I'll find a way to earn more money. Once I became an official disciple at the Spirit Beast Peak, these 2 would be my life insurance. I didn't want them getting hurt or killed in a fight. They called me Master, but to me, they were my only real friends in this world. My goal was to turn them into immortal insects, beings that could live forever by my side. I won't hold back then. Xiaochang shouted. He lunged at a blade of sword grass and crunched it down in seconds. Immediately, his black shell began to glow with a faint golden light, hardening instantly. Xiaobai was more elegant. She opened her mouth and inhaled, drawing the golden metallic essence out of the plant in shimmering ribbons. As she swallowed the energy, her scales began to glitter. This was exactly why wild spirit herbs always had beasts guarding them. They waited for the right moment to eat them and evolve. Once Xiaobai finished, the sword grass withered into dust. I only had 3 metal stalks left now. I had 20 days to find a way to make money before they needed their next dose. I sent them back into a deep sleep to digest the energy and meditate on their secret techniques. Then, I pulled out the 5 Elements Primordial Manual. I pressed my consciousness into the jade slip, and the words flooded my mind. When heaven and earth first opened, the 5 elements were born. First is water, second is fire, third is wood, fourth is gold, and fifth is earth. I recited the words aloud, my mind feeling sharper than ever thanks to the circulating spiritual energy. My memory was incredible now. It didn't take long to memorize the entire manual. Once that was done, I reached for the next technique. I focused on the 5 elements diamond arts and the sword kinesis technique, burning the pathways of the meridians into my memory. Shortly after, the 2 jade slips in my hands shattered into dust. This was the Tai Xian sect's way of protecting their secrets. The information was gone, and I was forbidden from teaching it to anyone else under threat of severe punishment. I didn't rush into practicing the core mental cultivation. Instead, I pulled out a sharp leaf from a stalk of sword grass. I wrapped it in my spiritual power, drawing out threads of golden gung qi and merging them into my palm. My face twisted instantly. My body shook, and veins popped out on my forehead. It hurt. It hurt so much more than I had imagined. As the golden gung qi circulated, I felt like every inch of my flesh and skin was being shredded by 1,000 tiny blades. Then, just as quickly, the tissue would regrow, becoming tougher and more resilient. My skin began to take on a faint metallic gold tint, just like Xiao Chang's shell. By the time I finished a single minor cycle of the energy, I was drenched. A puddle of sweat had formed on the ground beneath me. My face was pale, and my brain screamed at me to stop this torture, but a voice deep in my soul pushed me forward. If I wanted to become an immortal, if I wanted to be strong enough to never be bullied again, I had to be ruthless with myself. I had to endure what others couldn't. This is nothing, I hissed through gritted teeth. I pulled another thread of gung qi from the sword grass. A low, pained groan escaped my throat, but I didn't stop. I got faster. By the end of the night, I had absorbed 3 full leaves. Now, whenever I circulated the technique, a golden glow shimmered on my skin. I tested it with my black iron sword, sliding the blade across my arm. It left only a faint white mark. Before this, that sword would have sliced through my level 1 chi refinement skin like butter. I was satisfied. The agony was worth it. This was only the beginning. One day, I would reach a level where fire, water, and flying swords couldn't even scratch me. My strategy was clear. I would be the ultimate tank, and my insects would be the damage dealers. The 5 Elements Diamond Arts had 5 levels. To master a level, I had to reach a point where absorbing the elemental energy felt comfortable, like breathing, rather than painful. I also discovered that the spirit herbs grown in my bug world were far more potent than normal ones. A single leaf from my space held more energy than a 100-year-old plant from the outside. This meant my insects, and my own cultivation, would progress at a terrifying speed. Time flew. Before I knew it, the day of the senior handyman disciple exam for the Spirit Beast Peak had arrived. I flew my sword toward a large plaza halfway up the mountain. Even though the sun was barely rising, hundreds of disciples in sect robes were already sitting there cross-legged. Most were at the first level of chi refinement, with a few at the second. Anyone at the 3rd level was already an outer disciple and didn't need to be here. I found a quiet corner and waited. By the time the sun hit the center of the sky, there were over 500 people. The air was thick with nervous whispers. I wonder which manager is running the test today, someone whispered nearby. If it's Manager Zhu, it might be easy. If it's Manager Zhang, we're doomed. You seem experienced, brother, another voice said. Ashamed to say, I've tried every Peaks exam. I've never passed once. The success rate is less than 10%. I just hope I get to see Fairy Qingyao today. They say she checks on the exams sometimes. Who is Fairy Qingyao? Is she beautiful? The older disciple scoffed. You're at Spirit Beast Peak and don't know her? She's our Peak Master. A golden core powerhouse. Calling her beautiful is an insult. She's like a goddess from a painting, but 10,000 times better. She's ranked #1 on the fairy rankings of the entire Xuanlong mountain range. I opened my eyes, feeling a spark of curiosity. I usually didn't care for beauties, but someone who could make hundreds of cultivators lose their minds was worth a look. Suddenly, a cry pierced the clouds. A massive white crane with a 30-meter wingspan descended from the sky. Standing on its back was a curvaceous, elegant woman in her middle years, flanked by several powerful-looking disciples. The crowd's mood shifted instantly. People bowed low. "Greetings, Manager Zhang." I bowed along with them. From the gossip, I knew this woman was notoriously strict. The wind from the crane's wings was so strong it nearly blew us off our feet. This bird was likely a level 10 beast, close to Foundation Establishment itself. And Manager Zhang? She was definitely a Foundation Establishment expert. In the 3 great sects, you didn't become a manager without that level of power. Manager Zhang scanned the crowd with a cold, indifferent gaze. "No need for formalities," she said. As we stood up, one of the inner disciples beside her stepped forward and shouted for silence. The exam was about to begin. The time had finally come. Anyone who hadn't arrived yet was officially disqualified. One of the inner disciples stepped forward to announce the start of the senior handyman exams for Spirit Beast Peak. But before he could speak, a massive, overwhelming pressure descended from the sky. It felt like the weight of the entire ocean was crashing down on us. Suddenly, I felt a sharp twitch on my finger. My hidden yellow bone ring, the treasure that housed my secret world, vibrated violently. Then, a cold shiver ran down my spine. I lost all sensation of the ring. It didn't just go invisible. It felt like it had completely vanished from existence, as if it had never been part of this world at all. My heart hammered against my ribs. I frantically reached out with my mind, trying to sense the space inside. When I realized I could still feel Xiao Chong and Xiao by waiting within the ring, I finally exhaled. I looked up at the sky, just like everyone else. A pure white lotus throne drifted down through the mist. Standing upon it was a woman in simple, elegant robes. Her long, silver hair flowed in the wind, and her beauty was so ethereal it felt unreal. The moment I saw her, the rest of the world faded into gray. It was as if she was the only thing left in the universe. The other cultivators weren't exaggerating. Words like pretty or beautiful were insults to her. Her features, her posture, her very aura, everything was flawless. She looked like a masterpiece sculpted by the heavens themselves. Her calm, gentle gaze swept over the crowd. For a split second, I felt her eyes linger on me. My blood ran cold. Was it just my imagination? The feeling of being watched by such a powerful being vanished as quickly as it came. Manager Zhang was the first to snap out of the trance. She cleared her throat and bowed deeply. "Greetings, Peak Master." The rest of us woke up as if from a dream. We quickly lowered our heads, not daring to look any longer. Everyone knew that while Fairy Qing Yao looked gentle, she was a terrifying force on the battlefield. She had personally slain countless demonic cultivators, including 5 experts at the Golden Core stage. You didn't get to rule Spirit Beast Peak for decades by being soft. The fairy nodded slightly and transformed into a streak of light, vanishing back into the clouds. As she left, that mountain-crushing pressure disappeared. Almost instantly, I felt the cold metal of the yellow bone ring return to my finger. I let out a long, shaky breath. Thank God she didn't notice it. So that was a Golden Core master. With just a single thought, she could have crushed my soul into dust. It was terrifying. I had seen Foundation Establishment cultivators before, but this was on another level. Fairy Qing Yao's power and grace left a permanent mark on my mind. I couldn't help but think to myself that if I was going to live forever as a cultivator, I'd want a partner as perfect as her by my side. I was nearly 14 now, and thanks to the good food at the sect and my cultivation progress, I looked like a young man of 17. My hormones were starting to kick in. Before today, I never cared about finding a Tao companion, but now I had a new small goal. My big goal was immortality for me and my beasts. My small goal? Finding a wife as beautiful as Fairy Qing Yao. I wasn't like the other men, though. Most of them looked like they had lost their souls. They were blushing, hearts racing, looking ready to jump into a volcano if she asked them to. "I actually saw her," one guy whispered, his voice trembling. "My life is complete. Everything else is ugly compared to her now." I have to pass this exam. I have to stay on this peak just to be near her. Silence. Manager Zhang's voice cut through the air like a frozen blade. She scanned us with eyes full of contempt. I've been watching you all. Those of you who are still lost in your fantasies after the peak master has left have no mental discipline. Your hearts are weak. You are unfit for Spirit Beast Peak. As of this moment, you are disqualified. The crowd went pale. The dream was over. That's not fair, one disciple shouted from the back. The exam hasn't even started yet. Even Foundation Establishment Masters lose themselves when they see the peak master. How can you expect us to be any different? Manager Zhang snorted. A powerful wave of spiritual energy erupted from her, silencing the crowd instantly. The exam began the moment she arrived. If anyone else complains, I will settle this according to sect law. Now, read the list of those who passed the first gate. An inner disciple stepped forward and began reading names. Li Wei, Wang Guiying, Zhang Jiaohua, Lin Yuan. Most of the names were women. Almost all the men had been cut. My name was near the top of the list, which meant I had recovered from the fairy's presence faster than most. As my name was called, Manager Zhang looked at me and gave a small, approving nod. I wondered if she'd still be nodding if she knew I was currently dreaming about marrying her boss. The inner disciples probably had our portraits and files from the handyman hall, which is why they could identify us so easily. For a cultivator, a photographic memory was a basic skill. I breathed a sigh of relief. This Manager Zhang was incredibly strict. To think a surprise visit from the Peak Master was actually a hidden test. It was lucky I wasn't the type to lose my head over a pretty face. If my friend Wang Changxing had been here, he would have been the first one kicked out. The list was finished. Out of the 500 or 600 servants who started, only about 200 remained. Most of the women had been cut. It just went to show how terrifyingly beautiful Fairy Qing Yao was. Her charm alone had acted as a filter, wiping out anyone with a weak heart. Those not on the list, leave now, Manager Zhang said, her voice heavy. Hundreds of people sighed, their excitement from seeing the fairy completely gone. They summoned their tools and flew away, leaving the square feeling suddenly empty. Next is a test of endurance, Manager Zhang announced. Spiritual beasts and insects eat, drink, and excrete. They smell foul. This is the reality every disciple of the Spirit Beast Peak must face. If you can endure the stench of a farting bug for 20 breaths, you pass. The crowd's faces turned pale at the mention of the name. It sounded funny, maybe even a little cute, but we all knew the truth. These were spirit insects similar to stink bugs. In the mortal world, they were called farting beetles, and their stench was legendary. In the cultivation world, they were used to create gas that could knock out powerful warriors. Manager Zhang patted a large embroidered bag at her waist. Suddenly, a swarm of palm-sized, green insects flew out, their wings buzzing loudly. She controlled them, spreading them evenly among us. Asterisk puff, 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 asterisk. Clouds of blue-green mist erupted from the bugs' backsides. Some people instinctively tried to hold their breath. Do not hold your breath, an inner disciple shouted. Anyone caught holding their breath will be disqualified. Maintain a normal breathing rhythm. The smell hit me instantly. It was like a mixture of 10-year-old rotten eggs, river mud, and decaying corpses. It was thick enough to chew. But I was a spirit rot slave. I had spent my life cleaning drains and handling filth. I barely even flinched. My breathing stayed steady, letting the foul gas swirl into my nostrils. When it came to endurance, I didn't think anyone here could beat me. I had just spent days practicing the 5 elements Vajra art, a process so painful it felt like being sliced alive. Compared to that, this was nothing. I actually wanted to tell the bugs to bring it on. If they increased the dose, maybe more of my competition would drop out. Others weren't doing so well. Several pampered disciples started vomiting uncontrollably. Some couldn't take the shock to their senses and fainted on the spot, their eyes rolling back as they twitched on the ground. Since most of the remaining candidates were women, the image of elegant fairies was completely shattered. They clutched their mouths, bodies trembling as they fought the urge to get sick. Finally, 20 breaths passed. Manager Zhang struck out with her palm. A massive gust of wind swept through the square, blowing the toxic mist away. The air turned clear again. Junior brothers and sisters, the inner disciple said. I will now announce the names of those who passed. When you hear your name, step forward. Those who failed, remember to take your vomit with you. If you leave a mess, there will be consequences. The young girls looked at Manager Zhang like she was a demon. This wasn't a test, it was torture. Even the worst interrogators in the mortal world weren't this disgusting. Lin Yuan, Li Yu, Zhou Qing. The list was even shorter now. We had started this round with 200, and now only about 60 or 70 were left. I was the only one who didn't look like I was about to die. Behind me, the losers were miserably cleaning up the square. I saw one girl, who looked like I came from a wealthy family, start gagging all over again. The air in the square wasn't great, but to me, it felt fresh compared to those bugs. Manager Zhang nodded at us. Very well. The final round is a test of affinity. Low-level spirit beasts and insects have no intelligence. To raise them, you must communicate through spiritual affinity. This is the foundation of being a beast tamer. The swarm of farting bugs flew back, hovering in front of each of us. Communicate with the bug, the inner disciple instructed. Make it listen to you. If you can make it follow you for one full lap around the square, you pass. Understood. Understood, we shouted back. Finally, a normal test. Some people looked like they were ready to cry with relief. They immediately started trying to sweet-talk the insects. Oh, what a cute little bug, one girl cooed. Do you want to play with me? The bug responded by farting directly in her face. Another guy tried to bribe his. He stroked its head gently. Brother bug, if you just walk one lap with me, this spirit stone is yours. Puff, another face full of blue smoke. People were begging, threatening, and bribing, but most were just getting blasted with stench. The girls who had managed to hold it together during the last round finally broke. Their faces turned blue-green from the constant gas. However, a few people were different. With just a look or a wave of the hand, the bugs began to follow them. These were the ones with naturally high affinity. I was the fastest of them all. I made a connection the moment I looked at the bug. While others were struggling to finish half a lap, I had already completed the full circle. Honestly, with my secret abilities, I could have made every bug in the square swarm toward me with a single thought. But I had to stay low-key. The Insect Emperor ring and my unique physique were secrets I couldn't share. I could explain away my high cultivation by claiming I found a rare fruit, but such massive spiritual affinity was harder to justify. The farting bug followed me happily, circling my head like a loyal pet. When I stopped, it landed on my palm and rubbed against my skin. The other disciples looked at me like I was a freak. They were being treated like toilets by these bugs, yet here I was, treating mine like a puppy. It didn't seem fair to them at all. Half an hour passed. The inner disciple scanned the crowd and realized no one else was going to succeed. The final selection was over. The inner disciple stepped forward and announced the results of the final round. He told those who failed not to try again. He said they were already excellent for passing 2 rounds and suggested they try their luck at other peaks or return once they reached the 3rd level of chi refinement. Spiritual affinity, he claimed, could be improved over time. A heavy silence fell over the square. Hundreds of cultivators who had failed hung their heads in disappointment. They slowly shuffled away, disappearing into the distance. The square, which had held 500 or 600 people just an hour ago, was now nearly empty. Only about 20 of us remained. The passing rate was a brutal 1 in 30. Manager Zhang was every bit as strict as the rumors suggested. When Manager Zhang's gaze swept over those of us left, her expression softened significantly. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. She told us that from this moment on, we were senior handyman disciples of Spirit Beast Peak. Once we reached the 3rd level of chi refinement, we would be promoted to senior outer disciples, a rank even higher than the standard outer disciples. She told us that all the hardship we had endured was worth it. Then, she surprised us. She said she was giving us a personal gift. The farting bugs we had just tamed were ours to keep. She had raised them herself. They had superior bloodlines, were smarter than their wild cousins, and possessed better cultivation talent. My eyes lit up along with everyone else's. Usually, a senior handyman only becomes a regular outer disciple after reaching level 3. Getting the right to jump straight to senior status was an unexpected blessing. Plus, a standard farting bug larva cost at least 1 spirit stone. These elite ones raised by a manager? They were easily worth dozens of stones each. Manager Zhang explained that the gas these bugs released could be condensed into alchemy ingredients or sold to make poison. If we used them wisely, we would be wealthier than other cultivators. But she wasn't done. She announced she would reward the top 3 performers of the entire assessment. My name, Yilin, was called first. I was startled, but quickly stepped forward and bowed. Manager Zhang gave me a faint, appreciative smile. She told me I was the best overall performer and handed me a small pouch containing 30 spirit stones. She told me to practice hard and contribute to the peak and the sect. Holding that bag of 30 spirit stones, my impression of this middle-aged woman shifted instantly. She was strict, sure, but she was incredibly generous to those she approved of. Between the bugs and the rewards, she had just handed out hundreds of stones worth of resources. 2 other girls were rewarded as well, receiving 20 and 10 stones respectively. With the rewards settled, Manager Zhang transformed into a streak of light and vanished. 4 inner disciples remained to handle the logistics. One of them told us to follow him to our new quarters. They took to the skies, and we followed close behind. We arrived at a beautiful area nestled between mountains and water, reserved specifically for senior handymen. Because I had performed so well and left a strong impression on the inner disciples, they let me pick my house first. I chose the largest, most secluded courtyard in the area. This was a massive upgrade. Unlike the cramped dorms for preparatory disciples, each of us now had a private 2-story building. My new home had a courtyard, a martial arts field, a stable for spirit beasts, and a specialized stone room downstairs for raising insects. The whole property was protected by a concealment formation. It cost 1 spirit stone every 3 months to run, but it ensured total privacy. I was thrilled. I finally had a place where I could breathe. Once everyone was settled, the inner disciple's voice turned serious. He warned us that being a senior handyman came with a price. Every 3 months, we had to hand over 60 contribution points worth of products, larvae, beast cubs, or materials for alchemy and forging. If we failed 3 times, we'd be demoted back to regular handymen. The mood turned somber. I knew regular handymen only needed 20 points. Our quota was 3 times higher. A female inner disciple saw our worried faces and smiled. She told us not to feel too much pressure, as most disciples finished their tasks easily. She explained that we could use our identity jade plates to collect free larvae and eggs from the spirit beast and insect pavilions. We'd also get books on how to raise them. She reminded us that the peak held classes every 10 days and urged us not to miss them if we wanted to meet our quotas. Someone asked if we could sell the surplus for ourselves once the mission was done. The sister nodded. She said everything we raised belonged to us. This was the hidden income of Spirit Beast Peak. If we were skilled, earning extra spirit stones was easy. She even mentioned a disciple who raised a mutated ice spirit spider last year and sold it at auction for 500 spirit stones. 500 stones. We all swallowed hard. That was a fortune beyond our imagination. I asked about the registration process. Did every single bug need to be recorded? If I raised a colony of thousands of ants, would I have to register each one? The sister laughed. She said the sect didn't care much about low-danger creatures. They only tracked ghosts, demons, and exceptionally violent beasts. For common insects, we just needed to provide a general description. As I listened, my eyes grew brighter and brighter. Spirit Beast Peak was a gold mine. I had been stressing about how to earn spirit stones, and now the path was clear. This also meant registering Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong would be easy. They weren't considered high risk. Once I got settled, I could finally bring my secrets out into the light of this new world. I planned to hide my cultivation, register my pets, and move on. The 4 inner sect disciples saw that we had no more questions and flew away on their swords. As soon as they left, the new senior laborers scrambled toward the spirit beast and insect pavilions. Everyone knew the drill. The sooner you started raising them, the faster they grew, and the more spirit stones you made. Nobody wanted to lose their status after working so hard to get here. I made my way to the insect pavilion. After waiting in line for a while, I reached the counter. An old man verified my identity jade plate and handed me a thin booklet. He told me the book listed the difficulty and value of various low-level spirit insects. High difficulty meant high value. He warned me that the pavilion only provided free eggs once. If I killed them, I'd have to pay out of my own pocket or use contribution points to get more. I thanked him and flipped through the pages. The difficulty was ranked from 1 to 5 stars. 1 star meant the bug was hardy and hard to kill. I noticed the vigor ants the sister mentioned earlier were only 2 stars. They produced acid used for poisons and forging. I didn't hesitate. I skipped straight to the 5-star section and looked for the highest profit margin. My eyes locked onto the blood silkworm. These things were incredibly fragile. They got sick easily and were extremely picky eaters. They only ate tender mulberry leaves covered in the very first dew of the morning sun. On top of that, they had to live in freezing conditions. The colder the environment, the more active they became. But the payoff was worth it. They produced blood silk, a primary material for high-end cultivator robes. If I could pull this off, I wouldn't just finish my missions. I'd be rich. Senior, I want the blood silkworm eggs, I said. The old man froze. He frowned and looked me over. He told me that even inner sect disciples struggled to keep these alive. Because the eggs were so precious, I could only take 2. He asked if I was sure. I was a bit surprised. I knew 5 stars was hard, but I didn't realize it was inner sect failure hard. Still, I didn't back down. I had the insect emperor bloodline and my spatial ring. If they got sick, I'd just feed them my blood. I hadn't met a bug yet that didn't love my blood. My body was getting stronger, and my blood was full of vitality. I could handle 2 silkworms and my fart bug. I've thought it over, I said firmly. I want to try. The old man sighed and shook his head. He went to the back and returned with 2 translucent jade boxes, a manual, and a bundle of mulberry saplings. He told me to plant them in the spiritual field in my courtyard. They would grow fast there. As he handed me the boxes, a wave of cold air hit my face. Inside, I saw 2 snow-white eggs. These were worth 5 spirit stones, each on the market. The old man told me that if I succeeded, the pavilion would trade contribution points for the silk indefinitely. In this sect, points were often more valuable than stones. I thanked him and hurried back to my dormitory. As soon as I arrived, the fart bug flew out to greet me. It let out a series of happy pops, releasing a cloud of foul blue gas. I winced and held my breath. I didn't scold it, though. I just patted its shell. Then, I threw a palm strike, using the force of my cultivation to blow the stench away. It still smelled like death, but at least I could breathe. The bug wasn't very smart yet. It just knew how to fart when it was happy, sad, or fighting. Other than that, it just ate nectar and smaller bugs. I walked to the center of my courtyard. I felt a pang of pain in my chest as I took out a precious spirit stone and slotted it into a groove in the ground. Activate, I shouted, hitting a red jade stone with a burst of spiritual energy. The jade glowed. A semi-transparent barrier rose up, wrapping around my home. This was the mist array. It cost 1 spirit stone every 3 months to run. I walked outside the gate to test it. All I could see was a thick wall of white fog. Nothing inside was visible. The inner sect brothers said only Foundation establishment experts could sense what was inside, and only Golden Core masters could see through it clearly. I felt a sudden prickle of anxiety. Would a Golden Core master really spend their time spying on a lowly laborer? Then I remembered Fairy Qing Yao, the Peak Master. She had looked at me during the ceremony. Out of hundreds of people, her gaze had lingered on me. Was I just that handsome? Or did everyone feel like she was looking at them? I shook my head. She was a goddess in the clouds. I was just a bug on the ground. There was no reason for her to target me. Besides, only the insects that drank my blood could sense my secret bloodline, and they were bound to me for life. I pushed the worry aside. I was happy with my little yard. And if I kept this up, I heard the outer sect disciples got even bigger ones. If I managed to become an inner sect disciple, things would get even better. They owned private cave dwellings built directly over the spirit veins of Seeking Dragon Mountain. The spiritual energy there was incredibly dense. Cultivating in a place like that doubled the results for half the effort. My friend Song Lingtian already had a decent cave dwelling. I had visited him once for a lesson, and ever since then, I had been obsessed with getting one of my own. I made sure the courtyard gate was locked tight. I raised my hand, and the yellow bone insect ring shimmered on my finger. A flash of white light and a dark shadow streaked across the yard. Suddenly, Xiao Bai and Xiao Chong appeared beside me. Xiao Bai was now a massive python, 2 chong long and as thick as a water bucket. Xiao Chong had grown to the size of a grinding stone. Over the last 2 months, staying inside the ring and feeding on my nutrient-rich blood had caused them to grow at a terrifying speed. Xiao Bai, Xiao Chong, we finally have our own yard, I whispered to them. It isn't huge, but you're finally free to move around. I wasn't too worried about them being discovered. Even though a Foundation establishment expert could sense life signs inside the mist array, my 2 companions had learned a secret breath-concealing technique inside the ring. Unless a golden core master swept the area with their divine sense, they would stay hidden. Besides, why would a golden core master care about a couple of chi refining level insects? To them, anything below the Foundation establishment stage was just an ant. Xiao Bai let out a cheer of excitement. This is great, Master. I want to go for a swim and take a bath. I nodded. All right, I'll dig a pool for you next to the training ground. For a cultivator, changing the terrain was easy work. The truly powerful ones could move mountains and fill seas, turning oceans into dry land. The sect didn't have any rules against labor disciples remodeling their own living quarters. Xiao Chong was buzzing around frantically. Once he left the space inside the ring, he lost the ability to speak in a human voice. But I could still feel his thoughts perfectly. He told me he wanted to go out and steal a few immortal cranes so he could make me a spiritual barbecue. My face turned pale with fright. Xiao Chong, stop right there, I hissed. We haven't even found our footing here yet. We'll talk about that later. Do not go out stealing. We can't afford to offend any powerful experts. Xiao Chong's wings slumped. He looked completely dejected, as if his entire future had just turned gray and hopeless.